The stars bent wrong. Master Chief had seen slipspace ruptures before, twisted corridors of non-reality where physics surrendered to mathematics beyond human comprehension. But this was different. The UNSC frigate forward unto Dawn's remaining half had been drifting through the void for years before the distress beacon finally brought salvation. Or what should have been salvation? The rescue ship's slipspace drive had malfunctioned catastrophically during extraction, and now John 117 found himself tumbling through a tear in space that shouldn't exist, wrapped in his MJOLNIR armor as reality itself came apart at the seams. The HUD flickered. Cortana's matrix was gone, destroyed or separated, he couldn't tell which through the cascading system warnings. The armor's fusion reactor held stable, shields at 70% and climbing, but every other readout screamed impossible data. Stellar cartography showed nothing familiar. No Sol system. No UNSC NAV beacons. Just an endless sprawl of stars in configurations that matched no known human records. Then the planet's gravity well caught him. Atmospheric entry without a ship was something only a Spartan could survive. The energy shields flared white-hot as friction tore at the armor, temperature warnings climbing past critical thresholds. Chief tucked into a ballistic posture, letting the MJOLNIR's inertial compensators absorb what they could. The world below rushed up, arid plains, scattered settlements, and something massive on the horizon that looked like an industrial complex. He fired his thrusters at the last possible second, bleeding off velocity in a maneuver that would have killed an unaugmented human from the G-forces alone. The impact crater was 15 feet deep. Chief rose from the smoking earth, shields recharging, motion tracker coming online. His MA-5D assault rifle had survived the descent, mag-locked to his back. 7 spare magazines. 4 frag grenades. 2 plasma grenades scavenged from the last Covenant engagement. Not much for a one-man invasion, but Spartans had done more with less. The sky above was wrong. 2 suns, twin stars casting harsh light across ochre grasslands that stretched to distant mountains. The air tasted of dust and something industrial, acrid and processed. In the distance, massive structures rose like metal behemoths, spewing smoke into the atmosphere. And everywhere, the sound of machinery, repulsor lift engines, he would later learn, but now just another mystery in a galaxy full of them. Chief to any UNSC frequency, he broadcast on all channels. Static. This is Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, Service Number 117. Requesting extraction coordinates and sitrep. Nothing. Not even the carrier wave hiss of UNSC encryption protocols. He was alone. Again. The motion tracker pinged. Multiple contacts, approaching fast from the direction of the industrial complex. Chief moved to cover behind a rock formation, bringing the assault rifle to low ready. The contacts resolved into vehicles, boxy, white-armored transports riding on invisible cushions of air, kicking up dust trails. Atmospheric craft, not Covenant dropships. The design was blocky, utilitarian, nothing like UNSC engineering or the organic curves of Covenant technology. The transports disgorged troops. They wore white armor, full environmental suits with black body gloves visible at the joints. The helmets were smooth, expressionless, with dark visors that revealed nothing. Each carried a rifle of some kind, though the design was alien. No visible ammunition feeds, and the barrels glowed faintly at the tip. Energy weapons, Chief's tactical assessment supplied. Not plasma, something else. The troops moved in standard formation, professional but not quite up to ODST standards. Colonial militia, maybe, or local security. One of them raised a hand, and a voice crackled across an external speaker in a language Chief's translation software couldn't parse. It sounded harsh, authoritative. A demand, probably. Stand down, identify yourself, the universal language of soldiers establishing perimeter control. Chief remained in cover, finger resting along the trigger guard. First contact protocols demanded caution. These could be friendlies, colonists who'd seen his impact and come to investigate. Or hostiles who saw an armed combatant in unknown armor as a threat. The decision was made for him when one of the white-armored soldiers raised his weapon and fired. The bolt was blue-white energy, coherent plasma or particle beam, and it splashed against the rock Chief was using for cover. The stone superheated instantly, spraying molten fragments. Definitely hostile. Chief's shields flickered, 15% drain from a single shot. These weapons hit harder than Covenant plasma rifles. Contact, Chief said to no one, muscle memory engaging protocols for a fire team that wasn't there. He leaned out from cover and put a 3-round burst through the center mass of the soldier who'd fired. The 7.62mm armor-piercing rounds punched through the white plastoid like it was paper. The soldier went down hard, and his squad mates scattered, shouting in that harsh alien language. Chief didn't give them time to establish fire superiority. He'd fought the Covenant for 30 years, religious zealots with energy shields and plasma weapons who saw humanity as an affront to their gods. These soldiers, whoever they were, moved like garrison troops. They'd never faced a Spartan. Chief exploded from cover, closing the distance at speeds that would look like blur to normal human perception. The Spartan 2 augmentations pushed his reflexes to the edge of human possibility, and the MJOLNIR armor amplified every movement. He fired on the move, controlled bursts that dropped targets with mechanical precision. One soldier tried to bring his rifle around. Chief grabbed the barrel, crushed the focusing array with his armored fist, and delivered a palm strike that caved in the helmet with a sickening crunch. The remaining soldiers broke. They retreated to their transports, firing wildly, bolts of energy splashing against Chief's shields in a light show that drained his shield capacity to 40%. He took cover behind one of their abandoned vehicles, letting the shields recharge, and put precision fire into the transport's engine compartment. Something critical ruptured, fuel cell, reactor, he couldn't tell, and the vehicle listed to one side, smoking. The survivors fled in the remaining transport, and Chief let them go. He needed intel more than he needed bodies. He approached the downed soldiers cautiously, rifle sweeping for threats. Up close, the armor was clearly mass-produced, white plastoid plates over black environmental suits, utility belts with equipment pouches, and helmets with basic HUD systems visible through the cracked visors. Not sophisticated, but functional. Military hardware for occupation forces or planetary security. The rifles were more interesting. Chief picked one up, examining the design. No magazine, no visible ammunition supply. A power cell in the grip, connected to a Tabana gas cartridge in the stock. Blasters, his tactical database would eventually classify them, but for now they were just another unknown weapon system in an unknown galaxy. He activated his suit's recording systems, documenting everything. The armor design, the weapons, the language fragments from their communications. If he ever made it back to UNSC space, ONI would want every byte of data on this first contact scenario. A sound in the distance made him look up. More transports, dozens of them, converging on his position from the industrial complex. And above them, shapes in the sky, angular, aggressive, definitely military spacecraft. Patrol craft or gunships, moving with the purpose of units responding to a hostile incursion. Chief checked his ammunition. 6.5 magazines left. Against what looked like a battalion-strength response. He'd faced worse odds on reach. The Spartan melted into the rocky terrain, motion tracker painting the incoming hostiles in red. Somewhere in this strange galaxy, there had to be answers. Why he was here. How to get home. But first, he had to survive contact with whatever military force controlled this world. And Master Chief Petty Officer John 117 was very, very good at surviving. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The twin suns beat down on the alien landscape as the most dangerous human ever created prepared to teach this galaxy what a Spartan really was. The Imperial garrison on Lothal had dealt with insurgents before. Scattered cells of malcontents who planted crude explosives or transmitted seditious propaganda. Poorly armed civilians who thought passion could overcome training. The Empire had protocols for such nuisances: overwhelming force, public executions, and the cold efficiency of occupation doctrine. They had no protocols for Master Chief. Chief moved through the grasslands like a ghost in powered armor, using terrain masking and the planet's irregular rock formations to break line of sight with the approaching Imperial forces. His motion tracker painted a grim picture: 47 contacts closing from multiple vectors, supported by aerial units that scanned the ground with searchlights visible even in the harsh daylight. A coordinated military response, professional and thorough. These weren't militia. This was a standing army. The aerial craft were the immediate problem. They looked like atmospheric gunships, angular, predatory, with weapons pods slung under stubby wings. TIE fighters, though Chief didn't know the designation yet. He only knew they had altitude advantage and sensor capability that made concealment difficult. The MJOLNIR's active camouflage would have been useful, but the Mark VI didn't have that upgrade. He'd have to rely on old-fashioned fieldcraft. Chief wedged himself into a ravine where the rock walls would mask his thermal signature, watching the search pattern develop through his HUD. The Imperial ground forces were thorough but predictable, establishing a perimeter and gradually tightening the noose. Standard doctrine for containing an unknown hostile. They were treating him like a downed pilot or escaped prisoner, not realizing they were hunting something that had turned the tide of humanity's war for survival. His tactical assessment was interrupted by a new contact on the motion tracker. Single individual, moving perpendicular to the Imperial search pattern, fast and erratic. Not military movement. Someone running. Chief shifted position, bringing his rifle to bear on the approach vector. The figure emerged from behind a rock outcropping, humanoid, shorter than average human height, wearing a patchwork of civilian clothing and carrying what looked like a homemade weapon. Young, maybe teenage equivalent, with blue hair that definitely wasn't a natural human color and skin marked with some kind of facial tattoo or scarring. The kid froze when he saw Chief, eyes going wide. For a moment, neither moved. Then the kid did something completely unexpected: he grinned. "Okay, that is the most ASIC armor I've ever seen," the kid said in accented basic that Chief's translation software finally managed to parse. "You're not Imperial. You're not local. And you just dropped an entire garrison platoon by yourself." He gestured with his crude blaster. "I'm Ezra. And if you want to live through the next 10 minutes, you need to come with me. Now." Chief's instincts screamed trap, but his tactical analysis said otherwise. The Imperial forces were 60 seconds from his position, the aerial units were vectoring in, and this kid wasn't moving like someone setting up an ambush. He was moving like someone who knew this terrain and knew how to disappear. "Move," Chief said, his voice processed through the armor's speakers into something that sounded more machine than man. Ezra didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled up a rock face with surprising agility, and Chief followed, his armor's enhanced strength making the climb trivial. They crested the ridge just as the first Imperial patrol swept through the ravine below, white-armored soldiers moving in tight formation, rifles sweeping for targets. "This way," Ezra hissed, dropping into a narrow crevasse that looked like solid rock until you were right on top of it. "Old mining tunnels. Empire sealed most of them, but I know the ones they missed." The tunnel was tight, almost too narrow for the MJOLNIR's bulk, but Chief managed to squeeze through. The temperature dropped immediately, the oppressive heat of Lothal's surface replaced by cool underground air that smelled of minerals and old machinery. Ezra moved through the darkness with confidence, producing a small light source that cast harsh shadows on carved stone walls. "So," Ezra said as they descended deeper, the sounds of the Imperial search growing distant, "you want to tell me what a walking tank is doing dropping out of the sky and picking a fight with the Empire? Because that's either really brave or really stupid, and I haven't figured out which yet." "Where are we?" Chief asked, ignoring the question. "Lothal. Outer Rim world, middle of nowhere, currently enjoying the benefits of Imperial occupation. Ezra's voice dripped sarcasm. Mining, manufacturing, and misery. Empire took over 5 years ago, turned the whole planet into a factory. You're not from around here, are you? Like, really not from around here. How far to the nearest spaceport? Capital city, about 40 clicks east. But you're not getting off-world anytime soon. Empire's locked down all travel since you crashed. Every ship gets inspected, every passenger gets scanned, every cargo manifest gets reviewed by some bored bureaucrat with delusions of importance. Ezra stopped, turning to face Chief in the tunnel. You really rattled them. I heard the transmissions on stolen Imperial frequency. They're calling you an unidentified alien combatant. Governor Price herself authorized lethal force. That's not standard protocol for random crash landers. Chief processed that. He'd engaged in self-defense, but apparently he'd escalated the situation beyond simple first contact. The local government, this empire, saw him as a military threat. Which meant they'd commit resources to eliminate him. Resources he couldn't fight indefinitely with 7 magazines and 4 grenades. He needed intelligence. He needed allies. And most importantly, he needed to understand where the hell he was. You said you heard Imperial transmissions, Chief said. You have communication equipment. Ezra's grin returned. Better. I know people who make it their business to intercept everything the Empire doesn't want heard. Rebels. Freedom fighters. Irritating thorns in the Empire's side. He gestured deeper into the tunnel. They're going to want to meet you. The guy who soloed an Imperial garrison is exactly the kind of crazy they appreciate. I'm not a rebel. Yeah. Well, you just became one when you shot back. Empire doesn't do nuance. You're either with them or against them, and you made your choice pretty clear. Ezra started moving again. Come on. My friends are going to lose their minds when they see you. Chief followed, his tactical computer recording the tunnel route, cataloging every turn and junction. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, but information was critical. If these rebels had intelligence on this empire, on the technology level of this galaxy, on potential ways off-world, then they were a resource worth investigating. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber, clearly artificial, support beams of corroded metal, old lighting fixtures that flickered weakly, and the remnants of mining equipment long abandoned. But someone had repurposed the space. Crates of supplies, communications equipment that looked jury-rigged but functional, and a small crew of individuals who immediately reached for weapons when Chief emerged from the tunnel. Ezra, what the hell, started a woman with green skin and head-tails instead of hair, her hand on a blaster pistol. Hera, before you shoot, he's friendly. Probably. He's the one who dropped the garrison. Ezra gestured at Chief like he was presenting a prize. I found him hiding from the search teams. He's not Imperial, not Separatist, not anything I've ever seen. And his armor is incredible. A Lazet, massive, leonine, heavily muscled, stepped forward, honor guard rifle pointed directly at Chief's chest. That armor has weapon systems. Power generation I can hear from here. And he smells like blood and combat stimulants. The Lazet's voice was a deep growl. Zeb doesn't trust walking arsenals. Then Zeb is smarter than the kid, said another voice. A Mandalorian stepped from the shadows, armored in distinctive Beskar plates painted in orange and white, a helmet with a T-shaped visor that revealed nothing. The stance was professional, warrior assessing warrior. That's military hardware. Shock trooper configuration. But not Imperial. Not Separatist. Not Clone Wars era. The Mandalorian tilted her head. Where did you get that armor, stranger? Chief's shields had recharged to full. His rifle was in low-ready position, not quite aimed but not quite safe. 5 hostiles, the green-skinned woman, the Lazet, the Mandalorian, Ezra, and a droid of some kind half hidden behind a crate. Tight quarters. Limited room to maneuver. If this went kinetic, he could drop 3 before they returned effective fire, but the Mandalorian would be a problem. That armor looked serious. I built it, Chief said simply. Where I come from, it's standard issue. The Mandalorian laughed, a short bark of sound through the helmet's vocoder. Standard issue. Right. I've seen Mandalorian shock troopers, Imperial dark troopers, even clone commandos. Nothing moves like you moved. Nothing hits like you hit. She lowered her blaster carbine slightly, not quite a gesture of peace but acknowledgement of respect. You dropped 16 stormtroopers in 45 seconds. The Empire's already designated you Priority 1 threat. She maglocked her carbine and extended a hand in what Chief recognized as a universal gesture. Sabine Wren. Mandalorian, demo specialist, and apparently the only one here who recognizes a soldier when she sees one. She gestured to the others. Hera Syndulla, best pilot in the Outer Rim. Garazeb Aurelios, Lazat Honor Guard. Ezra you've met. And Chopper, she indicated the droid, is our astromech and resident pain in the Shebs. Chief didn't take the hand. Trust was still premature. You said the Empire designated me Priority 1. What does that mean? It means, Hera said carefully, that they're going to throw everything they have at finding you. Star Destroyers. Inquisitors. Possibly Vader himself if you're unlucky. She exchanged glances with Sabine. You're not just a threat to the garrison. You're a threat to Imperial control. One person who can take on their forces and win. That's dangerous to the entire occupation. Good, Chief said. Then they'll be looking for me instead of you. Zeb snorted. I'm starting to like this guy. We need to move, Sabine said, all business. This safe house is burned the moment the Empire connects Ezra to the incident. Hera, can the ghost make extraction? Already en route to secondary LZ, Hera confirmed, touching a comm unit on her wrist. But Chief, if you're coming with us, you need to understand, we're not a military unit. We're a cell of the Rebel Alliance. We fight the Empire because someone has to. If you want information, if you want a way off-world, we can help. But the price is you help us first. Chief had heard similar offers before. Insurrectionists wanting UNSC support. Civilians demanding protection. Everyone wanted a Spartan on their side. But he'd also learned that sometimes, the only way forward was through. What do you need? He asked. Sabine's grin was audible even through the helmet. How do you feel about stealing Imperial weapons shipments? The Ghost was unlike any spacecraft Chief had ever seen. It wasn't the angular brutality of UNSC frigates or the organic elegance of Covenant cruisers. It was a Corellian light freighter, all curves and asymmetry, painted in faded gray and orange that spoke of 1,000 hasty repairs and battlefield modifications. The cockpit sat forward like a predator's head, and the engines hummed with a sound that reminded Chief of slipspace drives but fundamentally different. Hyperdrive, Hera called it. Faster-than-light travel through a dimension called hyperspace. Not slipspace. Something else entirely. Chief stood in the cargo hold, mag-locked rifle resting against a supply crate, while Sabine worked on a holoprojector in the center of the compartment. The device flickered to life, displaying a three-dimensional schematic of what looked like a heavily fortified compound. Imperial Depot on the outskirts of Capital City, Sabine explained, manipulating the image with practiced ease. They're staging a weapons shipment for the garrison expansion, blaster rifles, thermal detonators, maybe even some heavy repeaters. Intel says the convoy moves at 0400 local time, minimal escort because the Empire thinks nobody's crazy enough to hit them this close to the city. They're right, Zeb rumbled from where he leaned against the bulkhead. It is crazy. Even with walking tank over here. Chief, Ezra corrected, perched on a crate with the casual confidence of youth. His name is Chief. And did you see what he did to those stormtroopers? 16 of them, Zeb. 16. In less than a minute. Stormtroopers are garrison troops, Chief said, studying the schematic. Light infantry. Poor marksmanship, adequate tactics, mass-produced armor with minimal kinetic protection. He pointed to a junction in the depot layout. Your intel shows patrol patterns. Sabine's helmeted head tilted. You analyzed Imperial combat doctrine from one engagement. It's what I do. Chief zoomed in on the depot's defensive positions. Sentry towers here and here. Vehicle bay on the western approach. Command center likely in the primary structure. You're planning a raid, not a reconnaissance. We're planning to send a message, Hera said, descending from the cockpit. Every weapons shipment we steal is one less battalion the Empire can arm. Every victory shows the people of Lothal that the Empire isn't invincible. She studied Chief with sharp, evaluating eyes. But you're not interested in messages, are you? You want resources. A way off-world. I want to understand where I am, Chief corrected. This Empire. The technology. The scope of your civilization. Everything I've seen suggests a galaxy-spanning government with military infrastructure that rivals the Covenant at the height of their power. He looked at each of them. I need context before I can plan extraction. Context, Sabine repeated. All right. Short version, the Galactic Empire controls most of known space. Thousands of worlds, trillions of beings. They rose from the ashes of the Republic about 19 years ago, led by Emperor Palpatine. Before that, there was a war, the Clone Wars, that tore the galaxy apart. The Jedi Order, peacekeepers for 1,000 generations, were wiped out. The clones who fought for the Republic became stormtroopers for the Empire. And anyone who resists gets crushed. Chief processed that. A galaxy-spanning totalitarian regime that emerged from a failed republic. Systematic elimination of a warrior religious order. Military force built on occupation and fear. He'd seen variations of that pattern in human history, fascist states that rose from chaos, always promising order and delivering oppression. The Rebel Alliance, he said. Insurgent network. Decentralized command structure. Hit-and-run tactics against superior force. You're fighting a guerrilla war. We're fighting the only war we can, Hera said quietly. We don't have star destroyers or armies. We have small ships, scattered cells, and people willing to die for freedom. She gestured at the hologram. This raid? It's not just about weapons. It's about proving resistance is possible. Chief understood that logic. He'd seen it on Reach, on Earth, on a dozen worlds where humanity made its last stands against the Covenant. The value of morale sometimes outweighed tactical objectives. But he also understood the math. Insurgencies rarely won against overwhelming force without external support or critical vulnerabilities in the enemy's structure. What about these Jedi? He asked. You said they were wiped out. Religious order with military capacity. The atmosphere in the hold changed. Became heavier. The Jedi were Force users, Ezra said, and there was something like reverence in his voice. Warriors and peacekeepers who could do things. Move objects without touching them. Sense danger before it happened. They had lightsabers, energy blades that could cut through anything. He hesitated. They're mostly gone now. The Empire hunts down anyone with force sensitivity. But there are still a few. In hiding. Force users, Chief repeated. The term meant nothing to him, but the description suggested psionic capability or advanced telekinesis. Theoretical human research had explored such abilities, but nothing operational had ever emerged. And the Empire hunts them because they're threats to control. Because they're threats to the Emperor, Sabine corrected. Palpatine is a Force user himself. Dark side. Sith. The Jedi's ancient enemies. He orchestrated the entire Clone Wars to destroy the Jedi and seize power. Her voice carried bitterness. And his enforcer, Darth Vader, personally led the purge. Vader is something else. A monster in black armor who can choke you from across a room. Even Mandalorians don't fight Vader if they can avoid it. Chief filed that away. Priority threat, Vader. Capabilities unknown but described as superhuman. Force user with combat armor. Would require further intelligence before engagement. This raid, Chief said, returning to immediate tactical concerns. You're expecting resistance. Always, Hera confirmed. Standard depot garrison is maybe 2 squads of stormtroopers, 1 AT-DP walker, possibly an officer. We hit fast, grab what we can, and disappear before reinforcements arrive. AT-DP. Sabine manipulated the hologram, bringing up the image of a bipedal walker, all angles and imperial efficiency, with a heavy cannon mounted in the head unit. All-terrain defense pod. 2-man crew, heavy blaster cannon, anti-personnel weapons. Slow but tough. Your rifle won't scratch it. Chief studied the walker's design. Bipedal configuration meant vulnerable joints. The head unit was likely the crew compartment, armor it, eliminate mobility, or target the power systems. Standard anti-armor tactics would apply. I can handle it, he said. Zeb laughed, but it was an approving sound. You know what? I believe you. The problem isn't the walker, Hera said. It's what comes after. Hit an Imperial depot, and they respond in force. We'll have TIE fighters on us within minutes, and if we're unlucky, a Star Destroyer in orbit redirects attention. We need speed and precision. Then give me the walker, Chief said. You focus on the weapons. I'll handle the heavy assets and rear guard. Sabine exchanged a look with Hera. You're volunteering for the most dangerous job without backup. I work better alone. He's a Spartan, all right, Sabine muttered. Same death wish as every Mando commando I've ever met. She pulled up a detailed schematic of the walker. Okay, walking tank. Here's what you're up against. The AT-DP has heavy frontal armor, but the joints are exposed. Neck articulation, knee actuators, and the power generator in the rear compartment. Hit any of those, and you can drop it. But you'll need more than that rifle. Chief assessed his remaining ammunition. 6 magazines of 7.62 mm. Against what was essentially a light tank, the rounds would be effective against joints and viewports but insufficient for critical damage. He'd need improvised explosives or heavier ordnance. Thermal detonators, he said, pointing to a crate in the hold. What's the yield? Enough to turn a speeder bike into shrapnel, Zeb said. Why? Because I'm going to climb that walker and drop one into the crew compartment. The silence that followed was the kind that preceded either respect or institutional commitment to psychiatric care. That's insane, Ezra said, grinning. I love it. It's tactically sound, Chief corrected. The walker's primary threat is the main cannon. Eliminate the crew, and you eliminate the threat. Everything else is secondary. Hera shook her head slowly, but she was smiling. You really are military, aren't you? That plan is exactly the kind of suicidal but effective strategy that keeps getting us into trouble. She looked at Sabine. Can we support him? Chopper can slice the depot's sensor grid, give us maybe 60 seconds before they realize they're under attack, Sabine said. I can lay charges on the vehicle bay, trap their reinforcements. Zeb and Ezra can hit the armory while Chief draws the heavy response. Hera, you keep the Ghost on standby for extraction. She looked at Chief. But if that walker doesn't go down, we're all in trouble. It'll go down, Chief said with the flat certainty of someone who dropped scarabs and wraiths and every other piece of Covenant armor humanity's enemies had fielded. All right, Hera said, making the call. We move at 0330. Full stealth approach, calm silence until Chopper kills their sensors. Chief, you're our hammer. Make it count. Chief nodded once. It was a simple operation: raid, extraction, evasion. He'd run 100 similar missions against the Covenant. The technology was different, the enemy was human, but the fundamentals of warfare never changed. Sabine approached as the others moved to prep gear, her helmet tilted in that evaluating way. One question, Chief. You said you're not from this galaxy. That you don't know how you got here. She paused. Are you looking for a way home, or are you looking for a reason to stay? It was a good question. The kind that cut through tactical assessment and hit something deeper. Home, Chief said. Always. Fair enough. Sabine tapped her helmet in what might have been a salute. Just so you know, if you survive this raid, the Empire's going to put a bounty on your head that'll make every hunter in the sector come running. You're about to become the most wanted being on Lothal. Maybe the whole Outer Rim. I've been on Covenant most wanted lists, Chief said. They called me Demon. Sabine laughed. Demon. Yeah, that fits. She turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. That armor, the way it moves with you, the shields, the power systems, that's not just technology. That's art. Whoever built that knew what they were doing. Dr. Halsey, Chief said quietly. She knew exactly what she was doing. 4 hours until the raid. Chief spent the time running system diagnostics, inventorying ammunition, and memorizing the depot layout until he could navigate it blind. The Ghost cruised at low altitude, skimming Lothal's grasslands under cover of darkness, twin suns now replaced by a sky full of unfamiliar stars. Somewhere out there, beyond those stars, was home. Earth. The UNSC. Humanity's desperate war against the Covenant. A war he'd been fighting for 30 years. But right now, in this galaxy, there was a weapons depot, an Imperial garrison, and a walker that needed to learn what happened when a Spartan came calling. Chief checked his rifle one last time, chambered around, and waited for the green light. The Empire had designated him Priority 1. They had no idea what that really meant. The Imperial depot squatted in the darkness like a metal predator, floodlights carving harsh angles through Lothal's pre-dawn murk. Chief approached from the east, moving through scrub brush with the patience of someone who'd spent years hunting Covenant elites through hostile territory. The MJOLNIR's motion tracker painted a picture of the defenses: 2 sentry towers, roving patrol of 4 stormtroopers, and the AT-DP walker positioned near the main gate like a mechanical guard dog. His comm crackled softly. Choppers in position, Sabine whispered. 30 seconds to sensor blackout. Chief waited, counting down in his head. 27 years of military operations had taught him that timing was everything. Move too early, and you alerted sentries. Move too late, and your window closed. Move exactly on time, and you owned the battlefield. Mark, Sabine said. The depot's floodlights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. To the casual observer, nothing had changed. But Chief's HUD picked up the shift immediately. The tracking sensors on the sentry towers went dark, their rotating arrays freezing mid-sweep. Chopper, the astromech droid, had just blinded the Empire's eyes. Chief moved. The first sentry never saw him coming. Chief cleared the perimeter fence in a single augmented leap, his shields absorbing the mild electrical charge from the barrier, and landed in shadow behind a prefab storage unit. The patrol was 60 meters away, moving in standard 2x2 formation. Professional but complacent. Garrison duty made soldiers lazy. He keyed his comm once, signal for team advance, and watched as Sabine's thermal signature appeared on his tracker, moving toward the vehicle bay. Zeb and Ezra split off toward the armory entrance. Hera held position with the Ghost, hovering a click out in case things went sideways. Things always went sideways. Chief closed the distance to the patrol at a dead sprint, boots barely making sound on the ferrocrete. The stormtroopers were mid-conversation, something about shift rotation and ration quality, when a half-ton Spartan in powered armor materialized from the darkness. The first one died before his finger reached the trigger. Chief's armored fist caved in the helmet with a wet crunch, and he used the body as a shield against the second trooper's panicked shot. The energy bolt splashed against white plastoid armor, and Chief hurled the corpse into the shooter, bowling him over. A boot to the helmet finished it. The third trooper managed to key his contact, Eastern Prime. Chief's rifle barked 3 times. The trooper dropped. The fourth ran. Chief let him take 5 steps before putting a round through the back of his knee. The trooper went down screaming, and Chief was on him in seconds, hand clamped over the helmet's vocoder to muffle the sound. "Where's your commanding officer?" Chief asked, voice processed into cold mechanical tones. The trooper thrashed, terror overriding training. "P primary structure. 2nd floor. Please, I'm just..." Chief applied pressure to a nerve cluster in the neck. The trooper went limp, unconscious but alive. He'd learned years ago that dead sentries triggered alarms faster than missing ones. Unconscious meant confusion, delay, precious seconds. Multiple hostiles down, he reported on comm, moving to primary objective. "Copy," Hera's voice was tight with tension. "Sabine's charges are set. Zeb and Ezra are inside the armory." "Chief, the walker just powered up. They know something's wrong." Of course they did. Imperial training might not match UNSC standards, but they weren't stupid. 4 troopers missing check-in would trigger alerts. The depot was going to active alert in seconds. Time to escalate. Chief sprinted toward the AT-DP, watching its head unit rotate as the crew searched for threats. The walker's main cannon tracked across the compound, powerful enough to reduce the prefab structures to shrapnel. It was hunting, sensors sweeping, and Chief was right in its search pattern. He didn't bother with stealth anymore. He went loud. The thermal detonator arced through the air, a perfect throw that would have made any ODST proud, and detonated against the walker's forward sensor array in a blast of superheated plasma and concussive force. The walker staggered, blinded, and Chief was already moving. He hit the machine at full sprint, armored boots finding purchase on the angular hull, and climbed with the kind of speed that would have been impossible for an unaugmented human. The crew panicked. The walker lurched, trying to shake him loose, but Chief's grip was enhanced by the MJOLNIR's powered gauntlets. He tore handholds into the armor plating, climbing toward the crew compartment hatch with single-minded focus. Warning klaxons screamed across the depot. Floodlights blazed to full intensity. Stormtroopers poured from barracks, and Chief could see them on his motion tracker, 20-plus contacts, forming up with parade ground precision. They were reacting exactly as doctrine demanded. Which meant they were predictable. Chief reached the crew hatch and slammed his fist into the emergency release. The mechanism shattered under Spartan strength, and he wrenched the hatch open to reveal 2 very surprised Imperial crewmen staring up at him through the walker's cramped interior. "Abandon vehicle," Chief ordered. They scrambled for sidearms. Chief dropped a thermal detonator into the compartment, slammed the hatch shut, and jumped. He hit the ground in a 3-point landing that cracked ferrocrete, shields absorbing the impact, and was already sprinting away when the detonator cooked off. The explosion was contained by the walker's armor, channeling force through the crew compartment and critical systems. The machine shuddered, sparked, and collapsed forward like a dying animal, mechanical legs buckling as hydraulics failed. "Walker down," Chief reported, bringing his rifle up as stormtroopers opened fire from multiple positions. Energy bolts filled the air, blue-white streaks that ionized atmosphere and left ozone stink in their wake. Chief's shields flared under sustained fire, percentage dropping to 60, then 40. Too much incoming. He needed cover. The disabled walker provided it. Chief slid behind the fallen machine's bulk, letting the armored hull absorb the incoming fire while his shields recharged. On his HUD, he could see Sabine's explosives detonate in the vehicle bay, a chain of blasts that turned Imperial speeder bikes and troop transports into twisted wreckage. The concussion rattled the depot, and the stormtrooper fire slackened as confusion rippled through their ranks. Armory secured, Zeb's voice crackled over calm, we've got enough hardware to arm a sector. Moving to extraction. Negative, Chief said, tracking enemy movements on his motion tracker. You've got hostiles converging on your position. Southeast corridor, 2 squads. We see them, Ezra said, and Chief heard blaster fire in the background. Could use a hand here. Chief assessed. Zeb and Ezra were pinned down 300 meters from his position, with Imperial reinforcements moving to cut off their retreat. Sabine was rigging demo charges on the main structure. Hera was inbound with the Ghost but still 90 seconds out. The tactical situation was deteriorating. Standard operating procedure would be to fall back, regroup, abort the mission. Preserve assets and try again later. Chief had never been very good at following standard procedure. He moved from cover, sprinting across open ground while incoming fire tracked his path. His shields took hits, 30%, 20, flickering red warnings on his HUD, but he didn't slow. He cleared the distance in seconds and hit the stormtrooper formation from the flank like a tactical nuke. The first trooper went down with a shattered chest plate, victim of a rifle, but that hit with enough force to pulp organs. The second died to a 3-round burst at point-blank range. The third tried to bring his rifle around, and Chief grabbed the weapon, crushed the focusing array, and delivered an elbow strike that sent the trooper flying into his squadmates. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't surgical. It was brutal, efficient close-quarters combat honed over 30 years of fighting aliens that wanted humanity extinct. The stormtroopers broke. Some military forces had discipline that held under any circumstances. The Covenant's elites would fight to the last warrior, driven by religious zealotry and species pride. The Flood couldn't break because they had no concept of fear. But garrison troops, humans bred on comfort and occupation duty, they had a breaking point. Chief was that breaking point. Paths clear, he called over comm, and Zeb and Ezra burst from the armory entrance, arms loaded with weapon crates and looking like kids who just robbed a candy store. You're absolutely terrifying, Ezra said, breathless. Has anyone ever told you that? Frequently, Chief replied, reloading his rifle. 4 magazines left. The math was getting uncomfortable. The Ghost screamed overhead, repulsor lifts howling as Hera brought the freighter in hot. The ship's boarding ramp dropped and Sabine appeared at the armory door, sprinting with a demo detonator in hand. Everybody out, she yelled. This whole place is about to become a crater. They ran. Zeb and Ezra hit the ramp first, Sabine right behind them. Chief covered their retreat, putting suppressing fire into the remaining stormtrooper positions. His shields were at 15%, armor had taken direct hits that scored the plating, and his ammunition counter was screaming warnings he didn't have time to address. Chief, move. Hera's voice was urgent over the ship's external speakers. He turned and ran, boots pounding ferrocrete, and the Ghost was already rising, ramp still extended. Chief hit the edge of the ramp at full sprint and magnetic boots locked him to the deck plating as the ship accelerated skyward. Behind them, Sabine's charges detonated. The depot disappeared in a rolling fireball that climbed 300 meters into the pre-dawn sky, secondary explosions chaining through fuel stores and ammunition caches. The blast wave caught the Ghost, but Hera rode it out with pilot skill that would have impressed any UNSC flight officer, rolling with the turbulence and converting it into additional speed. TIE fighters inbound. Hera called from the cockpit. 2 contacts, vectoring from capital city. Chief pulled himself fully into the cargo hold as the ramp sealed. Through the viewport, he could see them, angular, predatory craft that screamed through Lothal's atmosphere on twin ion engines that gave them their name. They were fast, agile, and already opening fire with laser cannons that stitched green death across the sky. I've got them, Hera said, and threw the Ghost into a maneuver that defied physics and common sense. The freighter twisted through three-dimensional space like a living thing, dodging cannon fire with margins measured in meters. Chief Mag locked to a bulkhead, watching through the viewport as the TIE fighters pursued with mechanical precision. They were good. Professional pilots executing textbook intercept patterns. But Hera was better. She led them through a narrow canyon, using terrain to break targeting locks, then pulled straight vertical in a climb that should have stalled the engines. The TIE fighters followed, and that was their mistake. At the apex of the climb, Hera cut thrust and let the Ghost fall backward, nose dropping to point at the pursuing craft. "Chopper, rear guns," she ordered. The astromech droid, positioned at the dorsal turret, opened fire with the Ghost's defensive cannons. Not the most powerful weapons, but accurate enough. One TIE fighter took hits across the solar panel array and broke off trailing smoke. The second pilot was better. He rolled hard, evading fire, and came around for another attack run. "He's persistent," Hera muttered, feeding power to the engines. "Then give me a shot," Sabine said, moving to the ventral gun position. The Ghost and the TIE fighter danced through Lothal's sky in a duel of pilot skill and tactical awareness. Hera juked and rolled, Sabine fired when angles aligned, and the TIE pilot matched them move for move. It was elegant, deadly, and ultimately futile. Chief watched the tactical display on his HUD, tracking vectors and speeds, calculating intercept angles with the cold precision of a Spartan's combat computer. The TIE fighter was predictable. Standard Imperial training meant standard attack patterns. Predictable meant exploitable. "Next time he comes around," Chief said into comm, "drop to 50 meters and level out for 3 seconds. "That'll give him a clean shot," Hera objected. "Trust me." There was a pause, then, "You're the most insane person I've ever met. And I've met a lot of insane people." But the Ghost dropped, screaming toward the ground at velocities that made the hull groan. The TIE fighter followed, sensing the kill. Hera pulled level at exactly 50 meters, holding steady for 3 seconds while the TIE fighter's targeting computer achieved lock. Chief watched the enemy craft through the viewport, calculating lead time, windage, and the fundamental aerodynamics of atmospheric flight. Then he opened the cargo bay side hatch. The wind screamed into the hold, a hurricane of atmospheric pressure and engine wash. Ezra shouted something lost in the roar. Chief braced against a support strut, brought his MA-5D to his shoulder, and aimed through the maelstrom at a target moving at hundreds of kilometers per hour. The TIE fighter's cockpit window was small, reinforced transparisteel, designed to withstand micrometeor impacts and laser fire. Not designed to withstand armor-piercing rounds traveling at supersonic velocities. Chief fired. 10 rounds. 3-second burst. Controlled breathing that treated atmospheric turbulence and target motion as just another variables in an equation he'd been solving since he was 14 years old. The TIE fighter's cockpit shattered. The craft yawed hard right, pilot dead or incapacitated, and corkscrewed into Lothal's grasslands in an explosion of twisted metal and burning fuel. Chief closed the hatch. The silence in the cargo hold was absolute. "Did he just," Ezra started. "Shot down a TIE fighter with a rifle," Zeb finished. "While we were moving. In atmospheric flight." "Spartan," Chief said, as if that explained everything. "Because it did." Sabine started laughing, the sound coming out slightly hysterical through her helmet's vocoder. "I take back every doubt I had about you. You're officially the craziest, most effective soldier I've ever worked with. And I've worked with Mandalorians." "Jump to hyperspace," Chief said to Hera. "Get us out of Imperial sensor range." "Already on it," Hera replied, and the stars through the viewport stretched into lines of light as the Ghost made the jump to faster-than-light travel. They were clear. Mission accomplished. Weapons secured, depot destroyed, 0 friendly casualties. And somewhere in Capital City, Imperial officers were staring at damage reports and casualties assessments, trying to understand what kind of force had hit them. They were calling him Priority 1. Soon, they'd call him something else. The demon of Lothal had just announced his presence. Hyperspace was wrong. Chief stood in the Ghost's common area, watching the swirling blue-white tunnel through the viewport, and his tactical mind kept insisting this couldn't be real. Faster-than-light travel existed in UNSC space, slipspace drives that punched holes through normal spacetime, creating corridors of compressed dimension that allowed ships to traverse interstellar distances. But slipspace was chaotic, unpredictable, a roiling nightmare of mathematical impossibilities that required AI navigation to avoid catastrophic miscalculation. This hyperspace was almost serene. Stable. Like the galaxy had built highways through the stars and all you needed was the right coordinates. "You're staring," Sabine said, pulling off her helmet to reveal a young woman with short hair dyed in patterns that matched her armor, orange, purple, blast yellow. Mandalorian war paint rendered in cosmetics. "First time in hyperspace." "Different technology," Chief replied. "Where I'm from, FTL travel is less stable. Hyperspace routes have been mapped for thousands of years," Sabine explained, settling into a seat and beginning field maintenance on her blaster carbine. "The galaxy's connected by lanes that avoid gravity wells, stellar masses, anything that could rip a ship apart. It's still dangerous if you jump blind, but with a nav computer and updated charts, it's just transportation." She glanced up. "How does your FTL work?" Chief considered operational security, then dismissed it. He was stranded in another galaxy. UNSC protocols meant nothing here. Slipspace drives create ruptures in spacetime. Ships travel through an alternate dimension where normal physics don't apply. It's faster than light, but unpredictable. AI assistance is mandatory for navigation. AI, Ezra said from where he was helping Zeb inventory the stolen weapons. Like a droid? No. Artificial intelligence. Human-created consciousness based on neural mapping or matrix assembly. Cortana was, Chief paused. The loss of his AI companion was still raw, even if she'd been fragmenting from rampancy before the transit. She was more than programming. "You cared about her," Hera said quietly, descending from the cockpit. "The AI. She was my partner for 8 years." Chief's voice was flat, emotionless, but something in his stance communicated volumes. "We completed over 200 missions together. She saved my life. Multiple times." The crew exchanged glances. In their galaxy, droids were tools, sometimes beloved, often irritating, but ultimately expendable. The concept of genuine partnership with artificial intelligence was foreign to most organics. "This UNSC," Hera said, changing subjects with pilot's instinct for turbulence. "United Nations Space Command. That's your military?" "Unified Earth Government's naval branch," Chief confirmed. "Created after the Interplanetary War, consolidated during the insurrection, and became humanity's primary defense force during the Covenant War." "Covenant," Sabine repeated, catching the term. "You've mentioned them before. Who are they?" Chief was silent for a moment, deciding how much to reveal. Then he began talking, and once started, found it difficult to stop. Years of military debriefings had trained him to deliver concise tactical reports, but these people weren't UNSC command. They were soldiers fighting their own war against overwhelming odds. They'd earned context. The Covenant was a religious alliance of multiple alien species united under the belief that an ancient race called the Forerunners were gods. They discovered humanity and declared us heretics, an affront to their religion. For 27 years, they systematically glassed human colonies, orbital bombardment that superheated planetary surfaces until nothing survived. Billions dead. Hundreds of worlds reduced to molten slag. Chief's voice remained level, professional, but the weight of those numbers hung in the air like funeral shrouds. The UNSC threw everything we had at them. The Navy, the Marines, the orbital drop shock troopers. We won tactical victories, but we were losing the war. And you? Zeb asked, his earlier skepticism replaced by something like respect. Where do you fit in? I'm a Spartan too. Part of a program that began when I was 6 years old. 75 children conscripted, augmented, trained to be the most effective special operations soldiers humanity could create. We were supposed to fight human insurrectionists. Then the Covenant arrived, and we became humanity's best chance at survival. Chief looked at his armored hands. 33 of us survived the augmentation process. Most died fighting the Covenant. I'm one of the last. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. These rebels understood child soldiers. The Empire had turned clone troopers, bred for war, into its enforcement arm. They understood desperate measures against overwhelming force. But the scale Chief described was beyond anything they'd faced. Your entire species was nearly extinct, Hera said slowly. And you fought anyway. We fought because surrender meant extinction. The Covenant didn't negotiate, didn't take prisoners except for experimentation. Every human colony was marked for glassing. Every man, woman, and child was considered a heretic deserving death. Chief met her eyes through his visor. So yes. We fought. Because the alternative was watching humanity burn. Ezra stared at Chief with new understanding. You're not just a soldier. You're a survivor of genocide. I'm a weapon, Chief corrected. Designed, built, and deployed to keep humanity alive. That's all I've ever been. Sabine shook her head. No. You're more than that. Weapons don't care about their partners. Weapons don't feel loss. You're a person who was turned into a weapon, but you're still a person underneath all that armor. Chief didn't respond. That particular philosophical debate had raged through ONI psychological evaluations for years. He'd long since stopped caring about the answer. This Covenant war, Hera asked. Did you win? I don't know. The admission cost Chief something. I was in cryosleep aboard the Forward Unto Dawn, drifting after the final battle at Installation 08. A replacement Halo ring, superweapon designed to sterilize the galaxy of all sentient life. We fired it before it reached full charge, destroyed the flood, but the ship was caught in the portal collapse. I've been drifting for I don't know how long. Then something pulled me here. Halo, Sabine said. You said that before. Superweapon that kills all life. The Forerunners built them as a last resort against the flood, a parasitic species that consumed all sentient biomass and turned victims into combat forms. 7 rings, scattered across the galaxy, capable of sterilizing all life within a radius of 25,000 light-years. Chief's tactical computer had memorized every specification, every horror. The Covenant worshipped them without understanding what they were. They nearly activated one. Would have killed everything in the galaxy. Zeb's ears flattened against his skull. Your galaxy has weapons that kill everything? What kind of insane? Desperate, Chief interrupted. The Forerunners were desperate. The flood couldn't be stopped, couldn't be negotiated with, couldn't be contained. So they built weapons that would deny the flood its food supply. They fired the array and committed species suicide to save the galaxy. He paused. I've stood on those rings. Seen what desperation looks like on a galactic scale. The Ghost's crew absorbed that in silence. Their war against the Empire was brutal, but it was still fundamentally comprehensible, tyrants versus freedom fighters, oppression versus resistance. Chief's war existed on a scale where entire species made extinction-level choices and entire civilizations burned. You came from a nightmare, Hera said finally. And somehow ended up in ours. Your war isn't the same, Chief observed. The Empire is human, or mostly human. They're not trying to exterminate populations for religious reasons. They're enforcing control through fear and military occupation. That's different. Different how? Ezra challenged. They destroyed Lazen. Zeb's entire species, nearly wiped out in a single orbital bombardment. They hunt force sensitives like animals. They enslave entire planets and call it order. How is that different from your covenant? Chief considered that. The Empire can be negotiated with. Defeated through political or military means. They're not driven by religious mandate or biological imperative. That makes them more predictable. More vulnerable. You think we can win, Sabine said. It wasn't a question. I think insurgencies win when the occupying force loses the will to maintain control or when external factors shift the balance of power. You need either a massive shift in Imperial resources, a critical failure in their command structure, or support from a power large enough to challenge them. Chief pulled up his TAC pad, displaying data he'd absorbed about the galactic situation. Your rebel alliance is scattered. Multiple cells, minimal coordination, no unified fleet. You're conducting harassment operations, not strategic campaigns. That's a problem. We know it's a problem, Hera said, frustration evident. But we're building something. Slowly. More cells joining every day. More senators quietly supporting the cause. It's not enough yet, but it will be. How long? Chief asked. I don't know. Years, maybe. The Empire's powerful, but power breeds overconfidence. They're stretched thin controlling thousands of systems. Eventually, they'll make a mistake large enough for us to exploit. Chief had heard similar assessments from UNSC Strategic Command about the Covenant War. Eventually the enemy will overextend. Eventually we'll find a weakness. It had taken 30 years, billions of dead, and a schism in the Covenant's religious structure before that weakness appeared. These rebels didn't have 30 years. The weapons we stole, Chief said, changing tactical focus. What's your plan for distribution? Zeb grinned, showing sharp teeth. Arm the cells on surrounding worlds. Lothal, guerrilla, maybe push some to the Atollon sector. Every blaster in rebel hands is one less in Imperial armories. Short-term thinking, Chief said bluntly. You need force multipliers. Training programs. Infrastructure. Weapons without trained operators are just expensive scrap metal. We have training programs, Sabine said defensively. I've personally trained 3 cells in demolitions and urban warfare. 3 cells, Chief repeated. Against an empire of trillions. That's not scale. That's desperation hoping to pass as strategy. The atmosphere in the common area grew tense. Hera's expression hardened. We're doing the best we can with what we have. Not all of us have powered armor and genetic modifications. I know. Chief's tone softened fractionally. I'm not criticizing your commitment. I'm pointing out that your current approach won't achieve strategic victory. It'll keep the Empire busy, cost them resources, maybe save some lives. But you won't win unless something fundamental changes. Like what? Ezra asked. A walking tank showing up from another galaxy. Like finding whatever leverage can break Imperial control. A symbol. A victory large enough to inspire mass uprising. Or a weapon that shifts the tactical balance so severely the Empire can't compensate. Chief gestured at the viewport, at the hyperspace tunnel streaming past. You said there are still Jedi in hiding. Force users who survived the purge. Find them. Recruit them. Use them. The Jedi are hunted, Hera said. Most who survived are in deep hiding. Revealing themselves means death. Then you need to make revealing themselves worth the risk. Chief had spent his entire life conducting asymmetric warfare. He understood the math of insurgency. The Empire hunts Force users because they represent an ideological threat. The Jedi were symbols of the old Republic, peacekeepers who oppose tyranny. Bring them back, publicly, and you give people hope. Hope is a force multiplier. Sabine was nodding slowly. He's right. The Empire's greatest weapon isn't their military, it's fear. The fear that resistance is futile, that the Emperor is invincible, that the Jedi are truly extinct. Break that fear, and systems might start openly defying Imperial authority. And how exactly do we find Jedi who don't want to be found? Zeb asked. Chief didn't have an answer for that. His expertise was in combat operations, not intelligence gathering in an unfamiliar galaxy. But he'd learned long ago that admitting gaps in knowledge was better than making tactical errors based on assumptions. That's your operational expertise, he said. I can fight. I can plan assaults. But this galaxy's intelligence networks, cultural complexities, political structures, that's beyond my knowledge base. I need information before I can be effective beyond direct combat. Then we'll teach you, Hera said, making a decision. You helped us today. That depot was one of the most successful raids we've conducted in months, and your unique approach made the difference. If you're willing to keep helping, we'll give you everything we know about the galaxy. Maps, Imperial structure, rebel contacts, everything. In exchange for what? Chief asked. He understood transactional relationships. Nothing was free in warfare. Help us hit Imperial targets. Train our people if you're willing. Share your tactical expertise. Hera smiled slightly. And maybe, if we get lucky, help us figure out what happened to bring you here. Because if there's a way for you to cross galaxies, maybe that's something the Empire would very much want to understand. And anything the Empire wants, we want to deny them. Chief considered that. It was a reasonable arrangement, tactical support in exchange for information and resources. He needed to understand this galaxy before he could devise an extraction plan. And if he happened to damage Imperial capabilities in the process, that aligned with his operational parameters. The UNSC had standing orders to oppose tyranny wherever encountered. Agreed, he said. But I need time to assess your organizational structure, review your intelligence on Imperial capabilities, and identify high-value targets. I don't conduct operations blind. Fair enough, Hera said. We're heading to a safe house on Guerrilla, another Outer Rim world, less Imperial presence than Lothal. You'll meet the rest of our contact network, get access to our intelligence databases, and we'll go from there. Chief nodded. It was a start. Not ideal, but operational reality rarely was. Ezra approached, curiosity overcoming caution. Can I ask you something? About being a Spartan? Depends on the question. You said you were 6 when they took you. That you were trained, augmented, turned into a soldier. Ezra's voice carried something complicated, sympathy mixed with recognition. Do you ever wish you'd had a choice? It was the kind of question psychologists and ONI debriefers had asked Chief hundreds of times. The kind of question that assumed trauma, victimhood, agency stolen by military necessity. Chief's answer had always been the same. I was selected because I had the genetic markers, the psychological profile, and the physical potential to become a Spartan. The augmentations nearly killed me. The training was designed to break anyone who wasn't strong enough. He looked at Ezra with eyes the boy couldn't see behind the gold-tinted visor. But I survived. And because I survived, because I became what Dr. Halsey designed, billions of humans are still alive. Colonies that would have been glassed were saved. Battles that should have been defeats became victories. Did I have a choice? No. Do I regret what I became? Also no. Because the alternative was watching humanity die. Ezra absorbed that, then nodded slowly. You're okay with what you are. I'm a Spartan, Chief said simply. It's all I've ever been. It's all I need to be. Sabine caught Chief's attention, gesturing to his armor. That rifle of yours, you're down to 4 magazines. Whatever makes those rounds, we don't have it in this galaxy. You're going to need alternatives. She was right. The MA-5D was comfortable, familiar, an extension of his tactical capabilities. But ammunition scarcity meant he'd eventually need to adopt local weapons. The captured Imperial blaster rifles were functional, but the ergonomics were wrong for someone in MJOLNIR armor. "What's available?" he asked. Sabine's grin was sharp. "Oh, Chief. Let me introduce you to the galaxy's finest selection of weapons technology. And if none of it works for you?" She patted her demo charges affectionately. "We'll just blow things up instead. Always a solid backup plan." Chief almost smiled behind his helmet. These rebels were chaotic, under-equipped, and fighting a war they couldn't win with conventional tactics. He fit right in. Guerrilla was a city world, all vertical sprawl and industrial haze, where millions lived in stacked hab blocks that climbed toward a sky choked with atmospheric traffic. The Ghost descended through shipping lanes crowded with freighters, passenger transports, and the occasional Imperial patrol craft, and Chief watched through the viewport as an entire civilization pressed against itself in the name of efficiency and profit. It reminded him of Earth's megacities before the Covenant War. Before the glassing. The safe house was buried deep in the manufacturing district, a warehouse complex officially registered to a shell corporation that existed only in bureaucratic records. Hera landed the Ghost in a concealed hangar bay, and Chief followed the crew through corridors that smelled of machine oil and recycled air. The operations center was larger than he'd expected. Not UNSC-grade command and control, but functional. Holographic displays showed star charts, Imperial fleet movements, and intelligence feeds from across the sector. A dozen individuals worked at various stations, humans, aliens Chief didn't recognize, and droids that ranged from astromech units to protocol models. This wasn't just a rebel cell. This was a network hub. "Chief," Hera said, gesturing to a Twi'lek male whose head tails were marked with scars that spoke of combat experience. "This is Cham Syndulla. My father. He leads the Free Ryloth movement, one of the larger resistance cells in the Outer Rim." Cham studied Chief with the kind of tactical assessment that came from decades of warfare. "Hera told me about Lothal. About the depot raid and the unusual ally you've acquired." His basic carried an accent, but his tone was clear. "You're the one they're calling the demon." "Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, Chief corrected. "The Covenant gave me that designation. I didn't choose it." "Names are less important than capability," Cham said pragmatically. "You dropped a garrison platoon and destroyed an Imperial depot with 4 people and a light freighter. That's either extreme skill or extreme luck. I'm hoping it's the former, because luck doesn't last in this war." "Skill," Chief confirmed. "And tactics appropriate to the operational environment." Cham nodded slowly. "Good. Because we need skilled operatives. The Empire is expanding garrison forces across the Outer Rim, and our cells are being pressed harder every month." Lothal was a message, one successful raid that cost them resources and embarrassment. "We need more messages like that. Louder messages." Chief assessed the room, the personnel, the equipment. "What's your operational capacity?" "Personnel count, available assets, intelligence networks. Across the entire Outer Rim resistance." Cham gestured at a star chart. "Maybe 5,000 active operatives. Another 20,000 sympathizers and support personnel. We have scattered ships, mostly light freighters and transports, nothing that can challenge Imperial capital vessels. Our strength is knowledge, we've infiltrated Imperial bureaucracy, supply chains, communication networks. We know where they're weak. We just lack the force to exploit those weaknesses." 5,000 against trillions, Chief said. "The math doesn't work unless you're targeting critical infrastructure or command structure." "Which is exactly what we've been doing," Cham said with the patience of someone who'd explained this before. "The Empire relies on fear and control, but control requires communication, supply lines, and garrison forces. We hit supply convoys. We slice communication relays. We extract Imperial defectors and turn them into intelligence assets. Death by 1,000 cuts." Chief understood the strategy, it was insurgency doctrine, and sound enough given resource constraints. But it was also reactive, defensive, buying time rather than seeking victory. He'd seen similar approaches in the UNSC's colonial security operations before the Covenant War. It worked against complacent governments. Against dedicated military opposition, it eventually failed. How centralized is Imperial command, he asked. A human woman at one of the intelligence stations looked up. Extremely. Emperor Palpatine controls everything from Coruscant, the capital world at the galactic core. Below him are the Moffs and Grand Moffs, regional governors with authority over sectors. Imperial military follows strict chain of command. Star Destroyer captains report to admirals, admirals report to sector command reports to Coruscant. Which means disrupting that chain creates chaos, Chief observed. Kill a Moff, and the sector loses coordinated leadership. Destroy a Star Destroyer, and multiple systems lose orbital control. In theory, Cham said. In practice, the Empire replaces losses quickly. Kill a Moff, and another rises. Destroy a Star Destroyer, and 3 more arrive to establish dominance. We've tried decapitation strikes. They're effective short-term, but the Empire adapts. Chief knew that pattern. The Covenant had been similar, kill a shipmaster, and another assumed command. The fundamental problem wasn't replacing individual leaders. It was breaking the system that produced them. What about this Emperor? Chief asked. Palpatine. You said he's a Force user. Sith. If he's the central authority, why hasn't anyone targeted him directly? The room went very quiet. Because, said a new voice from the shadows, those who try, die. And not cleanly. Chief turned. A figure emerged from a corridor he hadn't noticed, a Twi'lek woman in practical combat gear, with cybernetic implants visible along her neck and arms. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. They were hard, scarred by experiences that went beyond physical combat. Syndulla's daughter mentioned you, the woman said, looking Chief up and down with professional appraisal. The soldier from another galaxy who thinks like a tactician. I'm Numa. I fought in the Clone Wars, survived Order 66, and I've been fighting the Empire since the day it rose. She gestured at the holographic display. Let me explain why we don't just kill Palpatine. The display shifted, showing images Chief's tactical database immediately flagged as threat assessment. A figure in black armor, respirator breathing with mechanical rhythm, red lightsaber blade casting crimson light. Darth Vader. This is the Emperor's enforcer, Numa said. Vader. Former Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, turned to the dark side during the Clone Wars. He personally led the assault on the Jedi Temple, killed hundreds of Jedi including younglings, and spent the last 19 years hunting survivors. Her voice carried old hatred. Vader can sense Force users across star systems. He can choke someone through a view screen. I've seen him tear through battalion-strength rebel forces without taking a scratch. He's not just dangerous, he's a force of nature. Chief studied the image. The armor was clearly life support, the respirator, the sealed suit, the heavy plating. Which meant vulnerability. Armor was protection, but it was also dependency. Break the system, and you broke the wearer. What about the Emperor himself? Chief asked. Numa's expression darkened further. Worse. Palpatine doesn't need armor. He doesn't need weapons. During the Clone Wars, he posed as a politician, a chancellor working to save the Republic. In reality, he was a Sith Lord orchestrating both sides of the war. When the time came, he revealed himself, killed 4 Jedi Masters in seconds, and seized control of the galaxy. She pulled up another image, an older human male with yellow eyes and a smile like a predator. He can kill with lightning from his fingertips. He can cloud mines across entire planets. And he's been planning his rise to power for decades. You don't assassinate Palpatine. You die trying. Chief processed that. superhuman abilities, precognitive awareness, and control over what they called the Force. It was beyond anything humanity had encountered. Even the Forerunners' advanced technology hadn't included what seemed like fundamental reality manipulation. These Force abilities, Chief said. Are they quantifiable? Measurable limits? Vulnerabilities? We don't know, Cham admitted. The Jedi kept their technique secret, and most who knew their limits are dead. What we know is that Force users can sense each other, can influence weak minds, can move objects and enhance their physical abilities. The strongest, like Vader and Palpatine, are essentially unstoppable in direct combat. Nothing is unstoppable, Chief said flatly. Everything has weakness. You just haven't found it yet. Spoken like someone who hasn't faced a Sith Lord, Numa said, but there was no mockery in her tone. Just grim experience. Sabine entered the conversation, pulling up technical schematics. What Chief is saying makes sense, though. We've been treating Force users like mystical threats, but they're still biological entities. They need oxygen, vulnerable to kinetic force, can be overwhelmed by sustained fire. The problem isn't that they're invincible, it's that we haven't developed tactics to counter them effectively. Because tactics require data, Chief said. What's your intelligence on Vader's capabilities? Engagement reports. Survivor testimony. The intelligence officer brought up files, dozens of engagement reports, scattered eyewitness accounts, holographic recordings of battles where Vader had appeared. Chief absorbed them methodically, his Spartan training converting raw data into tactical patterns. Vader was strong. Incredibly strong. But he followed patterns. He relied on fear and overwhelming force, using his lightsaber and force abilities to dominate battlefields. He targeted leaders first, breaking command structure. He was vulnerable to sustained heavy weapons fire. Several reports showed him deflecting or dodging rather than tanking damage. And most importantly, he was alone. A single operator, no matter how powerful, could be isolated, flanked, overwhelmed with simultaneous threats. Your cells engage him frontally, Chief observed. Linear assault, conventional fire patterns. He deflects or dodges, then closes to melee range where he has advantage. That's the wrong approach. Then what's the right approach? Ezra asked, drawn into the tactical discussion. Area denial. Overlapping fields of fire. Force him to choose which threat to address first, then hit him from the blind angles. Sustained fire from multiple vectors, heavy ordnance mixed with small arms to complicate his target prioritization. And never, ever engage him in close quarters where his lightsaber is most effective. Chief pulled up the engagement holograms, annotating them with tactical overlays. He's a Force user, not invulnerable. He just hasn't faced opponents who forced him to fight defensively. Numa stared at the analysis, then at Chief. You really think you could fight Vader? I think I could survive an engagement long enough to withdraw or force a stalemate, Chief corrected. Winning would require specific intelligence on his armor's vulnerabilities, environmental advantages, and preferably support assets. I don't conduct suicide missions unless mission parameters demand it. That's the most rational approach to Vader I've ever heard, Cham said, something like respect entering his voice. Most people either refuse to believe he's real or assume he's invincible. You're treating him like a high-value target that requires appropriate tactical response. Because that's what he is, Chief said. Remove the mysticism, and he's an enemy combatant with advanced capabilities. I've fought Covenant zealots with energy shields and active camouflage. I've engaged hunters that required anti-tank weapons to kill. I've survived combat with flood combat forms that turned fallen soldiers into biological weapons. Vader is dangerous, but he's not unprecedented. The room absorbed that in silence. To these rebels, Vader was nightmare incarnate, the Empire's unstoppable enforcer. To Chief, he was just another target requiring specialized tactics. We're not sending you after Vader, Hera said firmly, descending from an upper level where she'd been conferring with her father. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But having someone who doesn't immediately assume defeat when his name comes up. That's valuable. What we need, Cham said, returning to strategic focus, is to continue building momentum. Lothal was a victory. We need more victories. Visible ones that inspire others to resist. And, Numa added, we need to recover something that could shift the tactical balance. Something the Empire is very interested in keeping hidden. Chief's tactical instincts activated. What kind of something? Numa manipulated the holographic display, bringing up an image of a crystalline artifact, geometric, pulsing with internal light, distinctly non-technological in appearance. A Kyber crystal. Massive one, discovered in an Imperial mining operation on Geonosis. The Empire's been excavating them for Project Stardust, their classified superweapon program. Superweapon, Chief repeated. His experience with Halo made that term trigger immediate threat assessment protocols. We don't know specifics, Cham said. But our intelligence suggests the Empire is building something that requires massive amounts of Kyber crystals. These crystals power lightsabers, but scaled up, they could potentially power weapons of planetary scale. Whatever they're building, it's being constructed in secret, and it's consuming enormous resources. Chief's mind immediately went to worst-case scenarios. A weapon that could destroy planets. The Empire had the industrial capacity, the scientific knowledge, and apparently the will to build such a thing. It was the kind of strategic threat that required immediate response. You want to steal this crystal, he said. We want to deny it to the Empire, Numa corrected. Whether that means stealing it, destroying it, or sabotaging the mining operation. The crystal is being held at an Imperial research facility on Geonosis, heavily guarded. Assault team would need to infiltrate, neutralize security, and extract or destroy the objective under time pressure. Suicide mission, Zeb said bluntly from across the room. High-risk operation, Chief corrected. Which means appropriate force deployment and tactical planning. What's the security profile? The intelligence officer pulled up facility schematics. 2 battalions of stormtroopers, ADST walkers, automated defense turrets, and likely at least 1 Inquisitor on site. The facility is built into Geonosis's catacombs. The planet's indigenous species were mostly wiped out during the Clone Wars, but the underground warrens remain. Lots of tight corridors, limited sight lines, close quarters. Chief studied the layout with professional interest. Close quarters negated some of the Empire's advantages. Their stormtroopers would struggle in confined spaces, the walkers would be road-bound to cleared passages, and artillery support would be impossible underground. For a small, highly trained team, it was actually tactically favorable terrain. I'll need detailed intelligence on entry points, patrol patterns, and response times, Chief said. Also composition of the assault team. I don't operate with personnel I haven't assessed. You're volunteering, Cham said, making it a statement rather than question. I'm volunteering to plan the operation, Chief corrected. If the plan is viable, I'll execute. If it's not, I'll tell you why, and we'll develop alternatives. I don't waste lives on bad tactics. Cham and Numa exchanged glances, some unspoken communication passing between experienced resistance leaders. Then Cham nodded. You have 48 hours to assess, plan, and brief, he said. If the operation is viable, we move. If not, we find another target. Either way, Chief, you've just become a formal asset of the Free Ryloth movement and, by extension, the larger Rebel Alliance. Understood, Chief said. Then, because it needed to be said, I'm helping you because your enemy is tyrannical and because you're providing resources I need. But my priority is finding a way home. If that conflicts with your objectives, I'll tell you. Fair enough, Hera said. Honesty is better than pretty lies. We'll work together as long as our goals align. And maybe, while we're at it, we'll figure out what kind of cosmic accident brought a Spartan to our galaxy. Chief nodded once. It was a reasonable arrangement. Strategic partnership with clear parameters and understood limitations. Sabine approached, carrying a Mandalorian blaster rifle, sleeker than Imperial models, with custom modifications visible along the barrel and stock. "For you," she said, offering the weapon. Verpine Shatter Rifle. Magnetic accelerator fires solid slugs at hypersonic velocities. No Tabana gas, no energy signatures. It's basically your rifle, just built with our technology. Figured you'd appreciate something familiar while your ammunition holds out. Chief took the weapon, feeling its weight, checking the balance. It was well made, not UNSC standard, but definitely military grade. The kind of weapon a professional would carry. "Thank you," he said. Sabine grinned. "Don't thank me yet. You're about to plan an infiltration into an Imperial facility that most of our operatives think is impenetrable. If this goes bad, we'll all die screaming in Geonosian catacombs surrounded by angry stormtroopers and psychotic force users." Chief checked the Shatter rifle's action, loaded a magazine, and slung it alongside his MA-5D. "Then we'd better make sure the plan doesn't go bad," he said. 48 hours became 72 as Chief dissected every bite of intelligence on the Geonosis facility. He worked with the methodical precision of someone who'd planned operations where failure meant extinction, cross-referencing patrol schedules, analyzing structural weaknesses, and wargaming response scenarios until he could navigate the facility blind. The briefing room on Guerrilla was packed. Cham's resistance cell had assembled their best operators, 15 personnel ranging from former Republic commandos to Mandalorian mercenaries to Force-sensitive refugees who'd survived Order 66. Chief stood before the holographic display, still armored, and delivered his assessment with the flat certainty of a Spartan briefing. "The Geonosis facility is designed for research and containment, not combat," he began, manipulating the display to highlight structural features. "That's our advantage. Imperial security prioritizes deterrence over flexible response. They expect overwhelming force to prevent infiltration, not tactical adaptation once penetration occurs." He zoomed in on an underground access tunnel. Primary infiltration vector is this abandoned mining shaft, 3 kilometers from the facility's active perimeter. Imperial sensors focus on aerial approaches and surface access. Underground is their blind spot. We insert via stealth transport, use the catacombs for concealment, and breach the facility here. He indicated a maintenance access point, where structural integrity scans show aging durasteel that can be cut with thermal charges. Numa studied the route, her cybernetic eye glowing softly. "That tunnel system is unmapped beyond 2 kilometers. Could be collapsed sections, environmental hazards, or indigenous life forms. Geonosis's insectoid population wasn't completely exterminated." "Acceptable risk," Chief said. "Unmapped terrain favors small units with adaptive capability. We'll bring seismic scanners and breach charges for obstructions." Once inside the facility, we split into 3 teams. The hologram reconfigured, showing team assignments. Team 1, Extraction Specialists. Your objective is the Kyber crystal itself. Secure it from the research lab on sublevel 3, prepare it for transport or destruction depending on field conditions. Team 2, Disruption. You engage security forces, create chaos, and draw Imperial response away from the primary objective. Team 3, Overwatch and Extraction. Secure our egress route and maintain communication with surface assets. "And you?" Cham asked. "I'm Team 2, Chief said. Along with anyone capable of sustained combat against superior numbers in close quarters. Our job is to be so threatening that Imperial forces focus on us instead of the extraction team." "Suicide," muttered one of the Mandalorians, a warrior in battered green armor marked with kill tallies. "Calculated risk," Chief corrected. "I've reviewed engagement footage of Imperial forces in confined spaces. They're trained for suppression and overwhelming firepower, not adaptive close-quarters combat. We exploit that. Use the catacomb geography to force them into kill zones, bottleneck their numbers, and prevent them from leveraging their numerical superiority. Sabine stepped forward, her tactical mind clearly engaging with the plan. You're treating the facility like a funnel. Let them pour in, but control where they go. We set charges here, here, and here. She marked structural points, and collapse corridors behind us. Imperial reinforcements can't reach us if the tunnels don't exist anymore. Exactly, Chief confirmed. We control the battlefield by reshaping it. Every collapsed corridor is one less avenue of approach. Every sealed bulkhead is one less threat vector. By the time Imperial Command realizes what's happening, Team 1 is already extracting with the objective. A human woman in pilot's gear raised her hand. Chief had learned she was Hera's co-pilot, call sign Gold Leader. What about air support? Imperial doctrine calls for TIE bomber strikes on rebel positions. Those catacombs won't protect us from orbital bombardment. Which is why we have 40 minutes from breach to extraction, Chief said, pulling up a timeline. Imperial response time from nearest garrison is 22 minutes. Orbital assets can't risk bombardment while their research facility and personnel are in the impact zone. They'll prioritize ground assault first. That gives us a window. Narrow, but exploitable. You've planned for everything, Cham observed. Equipment failure? Unexpected Inquisitor presence? The crystal being too large to extract? Equipment redundancy is built into loadout specifications, Chief replied. We bring redundant demo charges, backup communication systems, and medical supplies for combat casualties. If an Inquisitor is present, I engage them personally while Team 1 extracts. Force users are high-value targets but single operators. Isolate them from support, and they become manageable threats. As for the crystal, he brought up specifications. If it's too large for physical extraction, we destroy it in place with concentrated thermal charges. Mission success is denying the asset to the Empire, not necessarily recovering it. The room absorbed his planning with mixed reactions. The veterans recognized professional military methodology. The younger operatives looked somewhere between impressed and terrified. I have one question, said a Togruta male whose montrals were marked with Jedi symbols. Chief had learned he was Ahsoka Tano's former contact, a Force-sensitive who'd survived by hiding his abilities. You're planning to engage an Inquisitor alone if necessary. Do you understand what you'd be facing? A Force user trained in lightsaber combat with telekinetic abilities and probable precognitive awareness, Chief said. I've reviewed all available engagement footage. They're dangerous in melee, capable at range, and rely on fear and psychological dominance. But they're not invincible. Multiple reports show them retreating from sustained heavy fire or superior numbers. Because they're not suicidal, the Togruta said. They're elite operatives, not fanatics. If the cost becomes too high, they withdraw. But in those moments before they decide to retreat, they kill dozens. Efficiently. Then I'll need to make the cost high very quickly, Chief said with the flat pragmatism of someone who'd made similar calculations against Covenant zealots. Ezra, sitting near the back, spoke up. I want to be on Team 2. With Chief. Absolutely not, Hera said immediately. Why not? I can fight. I've been training with my blaster for months, and Cannon's been teaching me. Ezra stopped, realizing he'd said something he shouldn't have. The room went very quiet. Cannon. That name had come up in whispered conversations Chief had overheard but never directly addressed. Canon Jarrus, Numa said slowly, is a Jedi survivor who's been hiding on Lothal. And if Ezra's training with him, that means. I'm Force sensitive, Ezra finished, lifting his chin defiantly. I can sense things. Move objects. Canon says I have potential. That I could be trained properly if we weren't, you know, being hunted by the Empire. Cham looked at his daughter. You knew about this? Canon contacted me 3 months ago, Hera admitted. He's been careful, only using the Force when absolutely necessary. Ezra's been helping us on Lothal, and yes, he's been receiving limited training. I was going to bring it to the Council when the time was right. The time was right before we started planning operations involving Force users, Cham said, frustration evident. But he turned to Ezra with something softer than anger. You want to fight. I understand that. But you're not ready for this kind of operation. Team 2 is going to be facing the most dangerous combat scenario we can devise. Chief is a genetically enhanced super soldier in powered armor. The others we're assigning are combat veterans with decades of experience. You're brave, kid. But bravery doesn't stop lightsabers. Ezra stays on Gerrel, Chief said, his tone allowing no argument. He's undertrained, under-equipped, and his force sensitivity makes him a priority target for any Inquisitor present. His presence would compromise operational security and endanger the team. Ezra looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Chief's posture, the absolute certainty of command authority, made him back down. However, Chief continued, if he's force-sensitive and receiving training, that's a strategic asset. Long-term. The rebellion needs force users. Visible ones. Symbols that the Jedi aren't extinct, that the Force hasn't been monopolized by the Empire. That's a psychological warfare advantage you're not exploiting. Because revealing Jedi means painting targets on their backs, Hera said. The Inquisitors hunt Force sensitives obsessively. Go public, and you die. Go public with support infrastructure, security assets, and strategic deployment, and you become a symbol worth protecting, Chief countered. The Empire hunts isolated Force users because they're easy targets. Build a network, provide protection, and make the cost of hunting them prohibitive. That's how you shift tactical balance. The Togruta Force-sensitive leaned forward. You're suggesting we essentially declare war on the Inquisitorius. Draw them out by protecting Force-sensitives publicly instead of hiding them. I'm suggesting you stop fighting defensively, Chief said. The Empire controls the narrative because you let them. Change that. Find the surviving Jedi, protect them, and use them as symbols. Force the Empire to commit resources to hunting them, resources that aren't being used to suppress rebellions or garrison systems. Numa was nodding slowly. It's aggressive. Dangerous. But it has strategic logic. The Empire's stretched thin. Force them to prioritize Jedi hunting over occupation enforcement, and systems might have breathing room to openly resist. This is a discussion for later, Cham said, pulling focus back to immediate operations. Chief, your plan for Geonosis is solid. Risky, but solid. I'm authorizing the operation. Team assignments go out in 2 hours. Departure is tomorrow at 0600 local time. He looked at Chief directly. You'll be Team 2 leader. The personnel assigned to you are experienced, but they've never worked with you in combat. Can you command them effectively? I don't command, Chief said. I lead. There's a difference. If they follow my tactical decisions and trust my combat assessments, we'll accomplish the mission. If they don't, people die. It's that simple. One of the Mandalorians, the one in green armor, stood. I'm assigned to Team 2. Jai Kell, former Imperial Academy cadet, current Mandalorian contractor. I fought alongside cells across 3 sectors. He looked at Chief without hostility but without deference either. I don't take orders from unknowns. Prove you're worth following, and I'll follow. Otherwise, I trust my own judgment. Fair, Chief said. He understood warrior cultures. The Sanghaili had operated on similar honor-based hierarchies. Combat will prove capability. Until then, review the operational plan and identify weaknesses I've missed. Good soldiers question tactics that might get them killed. Jai Kell nodded slowly, respect entering his posture. You talk like a Mandalorian. I talk like someone who's survived 30 years of warfare against impossible odds, Chief corrected. The principles are universal. The briefing continued for another hour, equipment checks, communication protocols, contingency plans for a dozen possible scenarios. Chief answered every question with the same methodical precision, never guessing, never assuming. If he didn't know something, he said so and assigned someone to find the answer. By the time the briefing ended, the assembled operatives moved with the focused energy of soldiers preparing for combat. Not confident, but professional. Ready. Hera found Chief later, in the armory where he was conducting final checks on his weapons. The MA-5D was down to 3 magazines now. The Verpine Shatter rifle Sabine had provided was loaded and zeroed, its magnetic accelerator functioning perfectly. "You're good at this," Hera said without preamble. "Planning operations. Leading soldiers. It's more than just tactics, you understand people. How to motivate them without manipulation." "I understand soldiers," Chief corrected, checking the plasma grenades he'd salvaged from Lothal. "I don't pretend to understand civilians or politicians. But people who fight. I know how they think. What they need to hear. What they need to see demonstrated before they'll trust you with their lives. How many operations have you led?" Chief paused, accessing memory files that stretched back decades. 209 as primary operator. 63 as team lead. Dozens more as part of Spartan fire teams under other commanders. Not all were successful. Some ended with casualties I couldn't prevent. Do you remember them? The ones you lost? Every single one. Chief's voice was flat, but something underneath suggested the weight of those memories. James. Sam. Dozens of Spartans who died fighting the Covenant. Thousands of Marines and ODSTs who followed my orders into combat zones where not everyone made it out. I remember their names. Their service numbers. How they died. Hera was quiet for a moment. And you keep fighting anyway. Because stopping doesn't bring them back. But winning justifies their sacrifice. Chief locked a magazine into the Shatter rifle with mechanical precision. This mission tomorrow, it's high risk, but the tactical fundamentals are sound. If everyone executes their role, we'll succeed. If we don't, it won't be because the plan was flawed. It'll be because war is chaos and sometimes chaos wins. Comforting, Hera said with dry humor. I don't do comfort, Chief said. I do mission success and keeping my team alive. In that order when they conflict. Mission success over personnel survival, Hera repeated. That's cold. That's warfare, Chief corrected. If preserving one life means mission failure and strategic setback that costs hundreds more lives later, the math is simple. I don't like it. But I accept it. Hera studied him, this walking weapon from another galaxy who talked about death with the casual pragmatism of someone who'd lived with it for 3 decades. Ezra asked me once if I thought the war was worth the cost. All the people who've died, all the suffering. I told him it was, because the alternative, living under imperial tyranny forever, was worse. He doesn't believe you, Chief observed. No. He believes me. He just wishes there was a third option. One where nobody had to die. There isn't, Chief said with absolute certainty. The Empire won't surrender peacefully. They won't negotiate away their power. The only way to defeat them is to break their will or break their capacity to enforce control. Both require violence. That's not philosophy, it's historical reality. Every tyranny in human history ended the same way. And what happens after? Hera asked. When the Empire falls and the fighting stops? What does a soldier like you do when there's no more war? Chief was silent for a long moment. It was a question he'd never had to answer. The Covenant War had consumed his entire adult life, and before that, his childhood had been stolen by the Spartan program. Peace wasn't a concept he had operational experience with. I don't know, he finally said. But I'll find out when I get home. Hera nodded, accepting that answer. Good luck tomorrow, Chief. Come back alive. We're just starting to appreciate having a walking tank on our side. Spartans don't die, Chief said, repeating the phrase that had become UNSC legend. We're just missing in action. Hera smiled slightly. Then don't go missing tomorrow. We've got a war to win. She left, and Chief returned to his equipment checks, running through procedures that had become ritual. Weapons zeroed. Armor systems nominal. Shields at full charge. Medical supplies inventoried. Every piece of equipment that might mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure, verified and re-verified. Tomorrow, he'd descend into Geonosian catacombs and raid an Imperial research facility protected by hundreds of soldiers and possibly a Force user who could kill with supernatural power. It wasn't the most dangerous mission he'd ever conducted. But it was close. Chief finished his preparations and found a quiet corner of the safe house to rest. Not sleep, Spartans could function for days without sleep if necessary, but tactical rest, conserving energy for the operation ahead. In the darkness behind his closed eyes, he saw Reach burning. Saw Installation 04 tearing itself apart. Saw Cortana fragmenting from rampancy, her matrix degrading while she screamed about saving him. He saw 30 years of war compressed into nightmare imagery. Then he opened his eyes, stood, and checked his rifle one more time. The past was written. Tomorrow's mission wasn't. And Master Chief Petty Officer John 117 intended to write it in victory. The Phantom Shadow, a modified Gozanti-class cruiser with upgraded stealth systems, dropped them 3 kilometers from the Geonosis facility under cover of the planet's perpetual dust storms. Chief descended the ramp with Team 2 behind him, Jai Kell, the Mandalorian, Numa, the veteran Clone Wars fighter. And 4 other operatives whose combat record suggested competence under fire. Geonosis was a graveyard. The canyons and rock spires that had once housed billions of insectoid natives now stood empty, scoured by Imperial extermination protocols during the Clone Wars. The air tasted of copper and old death, and Chief's motion tracker showed nothing but geological features and the distant signature of the Imperial facility. Creepy world, Jai muttered through his helmet's external speakers. Every time I'm here, I remember this used to be someone's home. Focus on the mission, Numa said sharply, checking her blaster rifle's power cell. We mourn the dead by making sure the Empire doesn't do this to anyone else. Chief led them into the catacombs through the abandoned mining shaft exactly as planned. The tunnel descended at a steep angle, carved by Geonosian workers decades ago with precision that spoke of insectoid efficiency. His armor's lights illuminated rock walls marked with alien script and geometric patterns, cultural artifacts of a civilization the galaxy had allowed to die. The tunnel branched multiple times, but Chief navigated by dead reckoning and the seismic scans his HUD processed in real time. 2 kilometers in, they encountered their first obstacle, a collapsed section where the ceiling had given way, blocking the passage with tons of rock and debris. Thermal charges, Chief ordered, marking optimal placement points with his tac pad. Numa and Jai moved forward with demo equipment, setting shaped charges that would cut through the obstruction without causing catastrophic tunnel collapse. The explosion was muffled by kilometers of rock above them, but effective. The debris cleared, leaving a passage barely wide enough for Chief's armored bulk. They pressed forward, and the motion tracker finally painted new contacts, biological signatures, multiple, moving with purpose. Indigenous life, Chief said quietly, bringing the Verpine Shatter rifle to ready position. Stay tight. Avoid engaging unless they're hostile. What emerged from the darkness were Geonosians, or what remained of them. Twisted, starved creatures that had survived the extermination by retreating into the deepest catacombs. Their wings were tattered, their exoskeletons marked with radiation burns and chemical scarring. They clicked and hissed in their native language, and Chief's translation software managed only fragments: intruders, deathbringers, leave. They're warning us, Numa translated, her cybernetic implants apparently including language protocols. Telling us to leave before the metal ones find us. They mean the Empire. We're not here for them, Chief said, addressing the Geonosians even though he doubted they'd understand basic. We're here for the metal ones. The ones who destroyed your world. The lead Geonosian tilted its head, compound eyes reflecting Chief's armor lights. It chittered something complex, and Numa inhaled sharply. It says, the metal ones dug deep. Took the crystals that sing. Now the world screams. She looked at Chief. I think they're talking about the Kyber crystal. The Geonosians are force-sensitive enough to feel it. Chief made a decision. Tell them we're taking the crystals back. Stopping the metal ones from using them. Numa translated, and the Geonosians conferred in rapid clicks and whistles. Then the leader gestured with a thin, clawed hand, follow. They're offering to guide us, Numa said, surprise evident. Through passages the Empire doesn't know about. Could be a trap, Jai said, his Mandalorian instincts mistrusting the suddenly helpful natives. Could be an advantage, Chief countered. Local knowledge trumps intelligence reports. We follow, but stay alert. The Geonosians led them through passages that weren't on any Imperial survey, narrow tunnels that required Chief to turn sideways, squeeze through gaps that scraped his armor, and climb vertical shafts using handholds carved for insectoid physiology. It was claustrophobic, difficult, and absolutely invisible to Imperial sensors. They emerged in a natural cavern less than 200 meters from the facility's sublevel 3, exactly where Team 1 would be making their assault on the research lab. The Geonosians chittered urgently, pointing at a sealed blast door that represented the facility's emergency access. They're leaving, Numa reported as the creatures retreated into darkness. Said we're on our own from here. But they'll remember we tried to stop the metal ones. Chief nodded acknowledgement toward the vanishing Geonosians, then turned to his team. Stack up. Jai, you're on point for the breach. Numa, cover our 6. Everyone else, establish interlocking fields of fire once we're through. Rules of engagement, suppress and eliminate Imperial forces, avoid collateral damage to the facility's structural supports until Team 1 confirms objective secured. Understood, they replied in near unison, the response of professional soldiers. Chief planted the thermal charge on the blast door while Jai prepped stun grenades. The charge's timer counted down, 3, 2, 1, and the door blew inward in a shower of molten durasteel and superheated air. They moved. The corridor beyond was stark Imperial design, white walls, harsh lighting, surveillance cameras that immediately swiveled toward the breach. Chief put 3 rounds through the nearest camera, and alarms began screaming throughout the facility. All teams, we are loud, Chief transmitted on the tactical net. Repeat, we are loud. Team 1, execute primary objective. Team 3, prepare for rapid extraction. Stormtroopers appeared at the far end of the corridor, a full squad in standard formation, blaster rifles tracking toward the intrusion. Chief didn't give them time to establish fire superiority. He launched forward at speeds the troopers' training hadn't prepared them for, closing 30 meters in seconds while his team provided covering fire. The first trooper died to a rifle, but that caved in his helmet. The second took 3-round centermass from the Shatter rifle at point-blank range, the hypersonic slugs punching through plastoid armor like it was tissue paper. Chief grabbed the third trooper's rifle, crushed it, and used the soldier as a shield while Numa and Jai eliminated the remaining squad members with professional efficiency. Contact forward, someone shouted over Imperial communications. Chief was monitoring through hacked frequencies. Unknown hostiles, heavy weapons, there. Chief tossed a plasma grenade around the corner where reinforcements were gathering. The Covenant technology performed exactly as designed, detonating in a sphere of superheated plasma that turned the corridor into an inferno. The screaming stopped quickly. Move up, Chief ordered, and Team 2 advanced through the facility like a surgical strike, engaging Imperial forces with overwhelming violence and tactical precision. The facility's security responded exactly as Chief had predicted, battalion-strength forces converging on their position, attempting to use numbers to overwhelm the intruders. But the corridors were narrow, the sight lines limited, and Chief had spent 30 years perfecting close-quarters combat against enemies who outnumbered humanity millions to one. An AT-ST walker, smaller cousin to the AT-DP, appeared at a junction, its head-mounted cannons tracking toward them. Chief rolled under the first salvo, came up beside the walker's legs, and planted his last plasma grenade on the knee joint. The explosion severed the actuator, and the walker collapsed sideways, blocking the corridor and buying them precious seconds. Team 1 to all units, crackled over the comm, objective located. Crystal is larger than estimated, we're rigging demo charges for destruction in place. Need 5 minutes. Copy, Chief replied, putting controlled bursts into advancing stormtroopers. Team 2 will hold position. Team 3, status. Extraction route secured, Hera's voice came through. But I'm picking up a new signature inbound to your position. Fast moving, not reading as Imperial standard. Could be. The air pressure changed. Chief Spartan instincts screamed danger a half-second before his motion tracker painted a new contact moving at impossible speeds. The Inquisitor arrived like a dark comet. She was Twi'lek, skin pale as death, eyes burning yellow with Sith corruption. Her double-bladed lightsaber ignited with a sound like screaming souls, crimson blades that spun in her hands as she carved through 2 of Chief's team members before anyone could react. Scatter. Chief ordered, already moving, already adapting to this new threat parameter. The Inquisitor was fast. Faster than any human, enhanced by the Force into something that blurred the line between biology and supernatural. She deflected blaster bolts with casual precision, her lightsaber a wheel of red death, and she smiled as she advanced on the surviving team members. Jedi, she called out in accented basic, her voice mocking. No. Not Jedi. You feel wrong. Absent. Empty where the Force should be. Her yellow eyes locked onto Chief. What are you, warrior? You move like a Force user, but you are void. Hollow. A nothing wrapped in metal. Chief didn't bother responding. He fired. The Verpine Shatter Rifle's hypersonic slugs weren't energy, they were solid projectiles moving faster than sound. The Inquisitor's lightsaber couldn't deflect them the way it did blaster bolts. She had to dodge, using Force-enhanced reflexes to avoid the incoming fire, and that split second of defensive action was all Chief needed. He closed the distance while she was evading, discarded the rifle, and activated the energy sword he'd been carrying since Lothal, a Covenant weapon seized from a dead elite decades ago, its plasma blade still functional through years of careful maintenance. The Inquisitor's eyes widened. Impossible. Chief struck with Spartan speed and 30 years of melee combat experience. The energy sword met her lightsaber in a clash of superheated plasma that lit the corridor like a star. She was skilled, her Form 7 technique aggressive and precise, but Chief wasn't fighting her like a Jedi would. He fought like someone who'd killed Sanghaili zealots in hand-to-hand combat. No elegance. No form. Just brutal, overwhelming aggression that gave her no time to leverage her Force abilities. He used his armor's mass as a weapon, shoulder-checking her into walls, forcing her to defend against physical attacks her lightsaber training hadn't emphasized. When she tried to force-push him, his armor's mass and magnetic boots kept him anchored, and he used her momentary surprise to score a shallow cut across her shoulder. "You're not Jedi," she hissed, pain and confusion in her voice. "What are you?" "Spartan," Chief replied, and drove forward again. They dueled through the corridor, plasma blades casting crimson and blue light, Force energy crackling against MJOLNIR shielding, and Chief's enhanced reflexes matching her supernatural speed through sheer combat experience. She was powerful. Dangerous. But she'd been trained to fight Jedi, Force users who fought with specific techniques and philosophy. Chief fought to win, using every dirty tactic and psychological edge 30 years of warfare had taught him. When she committed to a high strike, he swept her legs with a kick that would have shattered human bones. When she tried to recover with a Force-augmented leap, he threw a fragmentation grenade that detonated mid-air and forced her to deflect shrapnel instead of pressing her attack. And when she finally made a mistake, overextending on a thrust meant to skewer him, he grabbed her wrist with armored fingers, crushed the bones, and slammed the energy sword through her chest. The Inquisitor's yellow eyes faded to their natural blue in the moment before death, and she whispered something that might have been, "Thank you," before collapsing. Chief deactivated the energy sword, recovered his shatter rifle, and keyed the comm. Inquisitor neutralized. Team 2 has sustained casualties. Team 1, status. Charges set, came the reply. Crystal rigged for thermal destruction. We're moving to extraction now. Copy. Team 2 withdrawing to Rally Point Alpha. All teams, exfil in 3 minutes. What remained of Team 2, Chief, Numa, Jai, and one other operative, fell back through the facility, laying demolition charges on support structures as they went. Behind them, the sounds of Imperial reinforcements grew louder, but they'd bought enough time. The crystal detonated first, a flash of light that resonated through the force so strongly that even Chief felt something, some fundamental wrongness as the massive Kyber crystal fractured and its energy dissipated. Then Sabine's structural charges blew, and entire sections of the facility began collapsing. They emerged into the Geonosian catacombs just as the ceiling behind them gave way, sealing the Imperial facility under tons of rock and dust. The Phantom's shadow waited in the dust storm, ramp extended, and they piled aboard as stormtroopers emerged from secondary access tunnels, firing desperately. Go! Chief ordered, and the ship lifted off, engines screaming as it climbed through the storm toward space. In the cargo hold, Chief conducted rapid triage. 2 dead from Team 2, 3 wounded but stable. Team 1 had suffered 1 casualty during their extraction. Team 3 was intact. Mission success, Numa reported, her voice tight with pain from a blaster wound to her leg. Crystal destroyed. Facility collapsed. Imperial research setback by months, maybe years. Chief nodded, already running post-operation analysis in his head. The casualties were acceptable given the mission parameters. The Inquisitor's presence had been unexpected but manageable. The mission objectives were achieved. But 2 soldiers under his command were dead. He'd add their names to the list he carried. Jai Kell approached, removing his helmet. His face was smoke-stained, but his eyes were clear. You killed an Inquisitor in single combat. With a lightsaber. I didn't think that was possible. It was an energy sword, Chief corrected. Similar technology, different origin. And she was skilled, but not invincible. Nothing is. You say that like you believe it, Jai said. Like there's nothing in the galaxy you think you can't fight. Chief thought about the flood. About the grave mind on High Charity, intelligence so vast and ancient it had nearly consumed him. About the Did Act, Forerunner warrior king who treated Chief like an insect before being stopped through tactics and luck. There are things I can't beat alone, Chief admitted. But there's nothing I won't fight if the mission demands it. Jai nodded slowly, respect evident. You know what? I believe you. And that makes you either the bravest or craziest warrior I've ever met. Possibly both. Chief didn't respond. He moved to where the dead were being prepared for transport, their bodies wrapped in thermal blankets until they could be given proper honors. He'd killed an Inquisitor. Destroyed an Imperial research facility. Dealt a significant blow to whatever project Stardust was building. But the Empire had thousands of facilities. Dozens of Inquisitors. And somewhere in the core worlds, Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine continued their grip on the galaxy. The war wasn't over. It had barely begun. But the Rebel Alliance now knew something important: the Empire could bleed. Their facilities could be destroyed. Their Inquisitors could die. And in this galaxy far, far away, there was now a demon who fought without the Force, without fear, and without mercy for tyrants. The Empire had designated him Priority 1. Soon, they'd wish they'd made it Priority 0. The success on Geonosis rippled across the Rebel Alliance's scattered networks like a subspace shockwave. Word spread through encrypted channels, whispered in cantinas, and transmitted via courier droids to cells across the Outer Rim. An Imperial research facility had been destroyed, an Inquisitor killed, and Project Stardust, whatever it was, had been dealt a significant blow. And at the center of every report was the same figure, a warrior in green armor who fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Chief spent the week following Geonosis on Gerrilla, analyzing combat footage, writing after-action reports, and training rebel operatives in close-quarters tactics. He worked with mechanical efficiency, treating each training session like a combat operation, pushing the rebels harder than they'd ever been pushed. Again, he said, watching a squad practice room-clearing procedures. Your angles are wrong. You're exposing yourself to crossfire from that corridor. Jai, show them proper PNG technique. The Mandalorian demonstrated, moving with the fluid precision of someone who'd learned these lessons through survival. The squad replicated the movement, and Chief nodded fractional approval before identifying 3 more tactical errors they needed to correct. Sabine watched from the observation deck, arms crossed. You know they're terrified of you, right? Half of them think you're going to kill them for making mistakes. If they make those mistakes in combat, someone else will kill them, Chief replied without looking away from the training floor. Better they learn here, where failure means repetition instead of death. You talk like a Mandalorian instructor, Sabine said. Beskar and brutality, the Mandalorian way. Except you don't have the Beskar. I have something better. Chief gestured at the trainees. The ability to demonstrate why the tactics work. They've seen me fight. They know the methods aren't theory, they're proven in combat. That's more valuable than tradition. Speaking of combat, Sabine said, her tone shifting, we've got a problem. A big one. Cham just received intelligence from a contact in the Imperial Navy. There's a new Star Destroyer being deployed to the Lothal sector, the Chimera. And its captain is someone you need to know about. Chief followed her to the operations center, where Cham and Numa were studying a holographic display. The image showed an Imperial officer, human male, blue skin, red eyes. Chief's database supplied, a species he'd encountered in intelligence briefings. Grand Admiral Thrawn, Cham said, his voice carrying weight. The Empire's greatest tactical mind. He's a student of warfare, art, and culture, uses them to predict enemy behavior. He crushed the Free Ryloth movement 3 years ago by studying our tactics, our history, our psychology. Killed hundreds of my people before we managed to escape his net. Cham's hands clenched. If he's being assigned to Lothal, it means the Empire is taking our activities seriously. And Thrawn doesn't fail. Chief studied the image. Thrawn's posture spoke of confidence without arrogance, and his eyes carried an intelligence that reminded Chief of Dr. Halsey, cold, analytical, always calculating 3 moves ahead. What's his tactical profile? Chief asked. Unpredictable, Numa said. Most Imperial commanders follow doctrine, overwhelming force, fear tactics, brutal suppression. Thrawn adapts. He studies his opponents, identifies their cultural weaknesses, and exploits them with surgical precision. He doesn't just defeat enemies, he understands them so completely that he can predict their actions before they make them. He's a strategist, Chief said, recognizing the type. Not just a tactician. He operates on multiple levels simultaneously. Exactly, Cham confirmed. And he'll be analyzing everything we've done. The Lothal Depot raid. The Geonosis operation. Your combat methods. He'll build a profile on you, Chief. On how you think, how you fight, and how to counter you. Chief absorbed that. The Covenant had produced strategic minds, prophets who orchestrated campaigns across dozens of star systems, shipmasters who adapted to UNSC tactics. But they'd been constrained by religious doctrine, by honor codes that made them predictable. Thrawn, from what he was hearing, operated without such constraints. Then we need to operate unpredictably, Chief said. Vary our tactics, avoid pattern recognition, conduct operations that don't fit the profile he's building. Easier said than done, Sabine said. Thrawn once defeated a pirate fleet by studying their culture's mythology and predicting which retreat vectors they'd choose based on sacred numbers in their religion. He thinks on levels most of us don't even recognize exist. He's still human, Chief said. Then, catching Numa's look, corrected, humanoid. Biological. Operating with incomplete information. We just need to feed him false patterns while conducting operations he can't predict. And how do we do that when he's studying our every move? Ezra asked, entering the operations center with Hera. Chief considered the problem with the methodical precision of someone who'd fought AI constructs and ancient Forerunner security protocols. We conduct an operation he can't study because it's completely outside his frame of reference. Something this galaxy hasn't seen before. Like what? Hera asked. Chief pulled up a galactic map, zooming in on the Lothal system. Thrawn will expect ground operations, raids, hit-and-run tactics. Standard insurgency methodology. What he won't expect is a direct assault on his command vessel. The room went silent. You want to attack a Star Destroyer, Cham said slowly. An Imperial-class Star Destroyer. With what? A single boarding team. With a Spartan, Chief corrected. And a small strike force. We infiltrate during a routine patrol, plant charges on critical systems, and withdraw before they realize we're aboard. Thrawn studies culture and tactics, he won't be expecting someone to think of his capital ship as just another target. That's insane, Numa said. But she was leaning forward, tactical mind engaging with the audacity of it. Star Destroyers have thousands of crew. Security detachments. Internal sensors. You'd need to avoid detection while moving through a ship the size of a city. I've boarded Covenant cruisers, Chief said. Ships with active camouflage, energy shields, and hunters that required anti-tank weapons to kill. A Star Destroyer is large, but it's also designed with Imperial overconfidence. They don't expect internal threats because they believe their security is impenetrable. It basically is, Sabine said. Except, she pulled up technical schematics. Imperial Star Destroyers have a weakness. Their shield generators are external, those two domes on the bridge superstructure. They're heavily armored, but if you could disable them, the entire ship becomes vulnerable to external attack. And, Hera added, her pilot's mind working through possibilities, if we could coordinate the sabotage with a fleet engagement, use the rebel fleet to apply pressure while the shields are down. We don't have a fleet, Cham interrupted. Phoenix Squadron has maybe a dozen ships. Against a Star Destroyer and its escort craft, that's suicide. Not if the Star Destroyer is crippled internally, Chief said. Disable power distribution, compromise life support in key sections, sabotage the hyperdrive. A Star Destroyer is a weapons platform, but it's also a complex system. Break enough critical systems, and it becomes a floating hulk. Ezra was grinning. You're talking about turning Thrawn's flagship into a coffin. I'm talking about removing his greatest tactical asset and demonstrating that the Empire's most powerful vessels aren't invulnerable, Chief corrected. Strategic victory through targeted action. It's what Spartans do. It's also a one-way trip, Jai Kell said, having entered during the discussion. Even if you succeed in planting the charges, extraction from an alerted Star Destroyer while it's in combat. The odds are irrelevant, Chief interrupted. The mission parameters are what matter. If destroying or crippling the Chimera requires sacrifice, that's an acceptable cost for the strategic advantage it provides. No, Hera said firmly. We don't do suicide missions. We're not the Empire, we don't throw lives away for symbolic victories. It's not symbolic, Chief said. Thrawn is their greatest tactical mind. His flagship is the projection of Imperial power in this sector. Remove it, and you remove the one commander who can systematically dismantle the rebel networks. That's not symbolic, that's strategic necessity. The argument continued for an hour, positions hardening, until Cham finally called for a vote among the cell leaders. The result was split, but ultimately, the operation was authorized with one critical modification. Extraction would be planned and resourced, even if success probability was low. Chief accepted the compromise. He'd learned long ago that perfect solutions rarely existed in warfare. You took what tactical advantages you could and adapted to constraints. The planning phase took 3 days. Chief worked with Sabine on demolitions placement, with Hera on insertion and extraction vectors, and with Jai on combat protocols for the strike team. They wargamed dozens of scenarios, identified failure points, and developed contingencies for every variable they could predict. On the 3rd day, new intelligence arrived that changed everything. The Chimera is departing Lothal, the intelligence officer reported. Thrawn received orders to investigate an incident in the Atollon system, reports of rebel fleet activity. He's taking a battle group, the Chimera, 2 light cruisers, and a fighter screen. That's our window, Chief said immediately. His attention is divided. He's focused on external threats, not internal security. We hit him en route to Atollon, while he's in hyperspace. You can't board a ship in hyperspace, Hera objected. The shields extend into hyperspace. You'd need, she stopped, realization dawning. The navicomputer. If we could hack into the Chimera's systems remotely, force them to drop out of hyperspace at specific coordinates. Where we're waiting with a boarding shuttle, Sabine finished. It's brilliant. And completely insane. Can it be done? Chief asked. The hack? Maybe, Sabine said. I'd need access to Imperial encryption protocols, a slicing droid with serious processing power, and about 12 kinds of luck. But maybe. Then we do it, Cham decided. Coordinate with Phoenix Squadron. Tell them we need fleet support at the interdiction point. If we're going to do this, we do it with overwhelming force once that Star Destroyer is vulnerable. The operation came together with the desperate energy of soldiers who knew they were attempting something that would either change the war or get them all killed. Chief stood in the Ghost's cargo hold while Sabine worked on her slicing equipment and Chopper the astromech interfaced with Imperial data network stolen from the Geonosis operation. The plan was elegant in its audacity: force the Chimera out of hyperspace, board during the confusion, sabotage critical systems, and withdraw before Thrawn could organize a proper response. You know this is crazy, right? Ezra said, approaching Chief. The kid had been unusually quiet since the Geonosis operation, processing everything he'd seen. I've conducted operations with worse odds, Chief replied, checking his weapons. The MA-5D was down to 2 magazines now. He'd been conserving ammunition, knowing each round might be critical. The Verpine Shatter rifle was loaded and ready. The energy sword was charged. But you always come back, Ezra said. Right? Spartans don't die, they're just missing in action. You said that. It's what we tell ourselves, Chief said quietly. It's what command tells the families. But Spartans die, Ezra. I've watched them fall. The motto isn't about invincibility, it's about remembering them. About refusing to accept that their sacrifice was meaningless. Ezra absorbed that, then asked the question he'd clearly been building toward. When you fight, when you kill people, do you feel anything? Chief was silent for a moment. It was the kind of question psychologists asked, trying to assess whether Spartans retained enough humanity to function in civilized society. The kind of question that assumed feeling was required for morality. I feel responsible, Chief finally said. Every enemy soldier I kill is someone's son, someone's brother, someone who made choices that led them to stand between me and mission completion. I don't enjoy it. I don't hate them. But I feel the weight of it, the knowledge that my actions end lives. That weight is what keeps me human. Canon says the same thing, Ezra said softly. About being a Jedi. That feeling the Force means feeling all life, including the lives you take. He says it's supposed to hurt, or you become like the Sith. Your mentor is wise, Chief said. Hold on to that. The day killing stops bothering you is the day you become the thing you're fighting against. Sabine's voice crackled over the comm, we're ready. Chopper's got the slice protocols loaded. Chief, Jai, Numa, you're up. This is happening. Chief sealed his helmet, felt the familiar hiss of pressure seals engaging, and moved toward the boarding shuttle. Behind him, Hera called out, come back alive, Chief. That's an order. I'll do my best, Chief replied, knowing that in warfare, best was sometimes not enough. The shuttle launched, micro-jumped to the interdiction coordinates, and waited. On Chief's HUD, he watched Phoenix Squadron's fleet arrive, dozen ships that looked impossibly small against the void of space. Commander Sato's command ship, the Phoenix Home, took position at the center of the formation. Then space twisted, and the Chimera dropped out of hyperspace. The Star Destroyer emerged like a predator, its wedge-shaped hull bristling with weapons. For a moment, there was perfect stillness, the Imperial vessel assessing this unexpected situation, Phoenix Squadron prepared for combat, and one boarding shuttle accelerating toward the giant warship's hull with suicidal determination. All batteries, fire. Commander Sato ordered, and the battle began. Chief's shuttle screamed through turbolaser fire, shields flaring under glancing hits, while Hera's piloting kept them alive through impossible maneuvers. They slammed into the Chimera's hull near the shield generator dome, mag-locked, and Chief burned through the outer armor with thermal charges. 30 seconds until they realize we're here, Sabine said, her voice tight. Move fast. They dropped into the Star Destroyer's interior, sterile corridors, harsh lighting, the sound of alert klaxons beginning to wail, and Chief activated his motion tracker. 3,000 souls on this ship. And somewhere among them, Grand Admiral Thrawn was analyzing this situation, calculating responses, and preparing to turn Chief's audacity against him. The hunt had begun. And this time, the demon was the prey. The interior of the Chimera was a cathedral of imperial efficiency, endless corridors of gunmetal gray, crew stations monitoring every system, and security detachments that responded to intrusion with mechanical precision. Chief moved through this environment like a ghost in powered armor, his motion tracker painting hostile signatures in red while his team followed in tactical formation. Shield generator is 3 decks down, Sabine whispered over the comm, her voice distorted by the ship's interference. But we've got company, full security detachment moving to intercept. Chief raised a fist, hold position. On his HUD, 20 contacts converged from multiple corridors, moving with coordination that spoke of training beyond standard stormtrooper doctrine. These were ship security, Imperial Navy troopers who specialized in boarding actions and internal threats. Jai, take left corridor. Numa, suppressing fire on my mark. Sabine, prep charges for the blast door ahead. Chief's orders were clipped, efficient. No wasted words when seconds mattered. The security forces appeared exactly when his tactical computer predicted, emerging from intersections with blaster rifles already tracking targets. Chief didn't give them the chance to establish fire superiority. He activated the energy sword, the blue plasma blade casting harsh light across white armor, and charged. The MJOLNIR armor turned him into a battering ram, half a ton of Spartan and powered assault system moving at speeds that violated human reaction times. The first 3 troopers went down before they could fire, victims of precision strikes that exploited gaps in their armor. The rest scattered, seeking cover, and Numa's covering fire caught them in crossfire that turned tactical doctrine into a fatal mistake. Moving. Chief called, and they advanced through the carnage, Sabine sealing blast doors behind them with plasma torches, buying precious seconds. The shield generator room was a massive chamber dominated by the cylindrical power core that projected the Star Destroyer's defensive screens. Technicians in gray uniforms scrambled for emergency panels, but Chief's team secured the room with brutal efficiency. Plant the charges, Chief ordered, covering the entrance while Sabine went to work. The Mandalorian demo expert moved with practiced speed, placing shaped thermal explosives at structural weak points identified in their planning sessions. 30 seconds per charge, 4 charges total. We need 2 minutes. They didn't have 2 minutes. The blast door at the far end of the chamber exploded inward, not from thermal charges, but from something far more violent. The Force. And through the smoking wreckage stepped a figure that made Chief's threat assessment protocols scream warnings. Not Thrawn. Thrawn commanded from the bridge, analyzing battles from strategic distance. This was something worse. The figure wore black robes marked with red Sith symbols, carried a double-bladed lightsaber that burned crimson, and moved with predatory grace that suggested extensive combat experience. Another Inquisitor, but this one felt different. Older. More dangerous. The fifth brother sends his regards from whatever hell you sent him to, the Inquisitor said, his voice modulated through a mask that resembled a skull. Did you think the Empire would send only one Force user to hunt you, demon? Did you think yourself so insignificant? Chief brought the Verpine Shatter rifle up, but the Inquisitor was already moving, crossing 30 meters in a blur of Force-enhanced speed that turned him into a weapon. The lightsaber carved through the air where Chief's head had been a microsecond earlier, and only Spartan reflexes saved him from decapitation. Sabine, finish the charges. Chief ordered, activating his energy sword and engaging the Inquisitor in close combat. They dueled across the generator room, plasma blades clashing with sounds like thunder, the Force pushing against MJOLNIR shielding in attacks that drained his energy reserves with terrifying speed. This Inquisitor was better than the Twi'lek on Geonosis. More experienced. More vicious. He fought with Form VII's aggressive unpredictability, mixing lightsaber technique with telekinetic strikes that came from angles Chief couldn't predict. A force push sent Chief crashing into a bulkhead, his shields dropping to 15%. The Inquisitor followed up with a leap that should have ended the fight, lightsaber raised for a killing blow, but Chief rolled, came up with the Shatter rifle, and fired 3 rounds at point-blank range. The Inquisitor deflected 2 with his lightsaber, but the third caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Chief pressed the advantage, closing distance again, using his armor's mass and strength to turn the fight into brutal infighting where technique mattered less than raw power. You fight without honor, the Inquisitor snarled, blood seeping from his wound. Without art. You're a beast in metal skin. I fight to win, Chief replied, and drove a armored fist into the Inquisitor's mask hard enough to crack it. The Inquisitor staggered, and Chief saw his opening. He grabbed the enemy's lightsaber arm, twisted with force that shattered bones, and slammed the energy sword through the Inquisitor's chest. The red blade sputtered and died, and the Inquisitor collapsed, whispering something in a language Chief didn't recognize. Charges set. Sabine called. Timer's running, we have 60 seconds before this whole section goes critical. Withdraw. Chief ordered, but his motion tracker showed new contacts, dozens of them, security forces converging from every direction, trapping them in the generator room. We're boxed in, Jai said, firing controlled bursts through the doorway. Too many. We're not making it to the shuttle. Chief's tactical computer ran probability calculations and delivered numbers he didn't like. Extraction probability, 12%. Mission success without team survival, 94%. The math was simple. Brutal. But simple. You 3 withdraw, Chief said. I'll hold them here, buy you time to reach the shuttle. Negative, Numa said flatly. We don't leave soldiers behind. That's an order, not a request, Chief said, his voice carrying command authority that had directed battalions. The charges are set. The mission succeeds if someone survives to report. I can hold this position longer than any of you. Move. Now. Sabine started to argue, but Jai grabbed her arm. He's right. And he's buying us a chance. Don't waste it. The Mandalorian met Chief's visor with his own. Good hunting, Spartan. May you find your way to the Manda. They withdrew, disappearing into the service corridors while Chief sealed the blast door behind them and turned to face the approaching Imperial forces. His shields were at 10%. He had 43 rounds left in the Shatter rifle. One magazine for the MA-5D. The energy sword's charge was depleting. And somewhere on this ship, Grand Admiral Thrawn was watching this unfold, analyzing Chief's tactics, and preparing his final move. The first wave of security forces hit the sealed blast door with breaching charges. Chief took position behind the generator core, using it for cover, and opened fire with controlled precision. Every shot counted now. Every round had to matter. The blast door blew inward, and stormtroopers poured through, 2 squads in tight formation, moving with professional discipline. Chief dropped 6 before they established cover, wounded 3 more, and forced them into defensive positions that limited their fields of fire. "Target is contained in generator room," someone shouted over Imperial comms. "All units converge. Bring heavy weapons." Heavy weapons meant they were going to stop trying to capture him and start trying to kill him. Which meant he'd elevated from threat to unacceptable risk. Good. The charges on the shield generator counted down, 30 seconds. Chief checked his ammunition. 31 rounds left. Not enough. Never enough. A new voice came over the Imperial comm network, calm and measured, with an accent that suggested careful study of Basic as a second language. "Master Chief Petty Officer John 117. I am Grand Admiral Thrawn. Your tactics are fascinating. Aggressive yet calculated. Brutal yet precise. You fight like no warrior I have encountered in this galaxy." Chief didn't respond. Engaging in dialogue was a psychological warfare tactic designed to distract. "You're wondering if your team escaped," Thrawn continued, his voice analytical rather than mocking. "They did. I allowed it. Because I wanted to speak with you directly, warrior to warrior. You are an anomaly, a soldier from beyond our galaxy, fighting a war that isn't yours, for people you barely know." "Why?" "Because someone has to," Chief said, surprising himself by responding. Maybe because he was low on ammunition and buying seconds mattered. Maybe because part of him wanted this tactical genius to understand. "A simple answer," Thrawn said. "And yet, profoundly revealing. You fight not from ideology or personal gain, but from duty. A soldier's duty to oppose tyranny wherever encountered. I respect that, even as I prepare to end you. You have cost the Empire resources, personnel, and strategic assets. You have demonstrated that our forces are not invincible. That cannot be allowed to continue." The blast doors at both ends of the generator room exploded inward simultaneously, precision breaching that spoke of Thrawn's tactical coordination. Imperial forces poured in from multiple vectors, and Chief knew the mathematics had finally caught up to him. He fired the last rounds in his Shatter rifle, dropped it, pulled the MA-5D and burned through the magazine in controlled bursts that bought seconds. When the rifle clicked empty, he drew the energy sword and prepared to sell his life as expensively as possible. The shield generator's charges reached 0. The explosion was contained, shaped, and devastating. The generator core ruptured, sending electromagnetic pulses cascading through the ship's systems. Lights flickered and died. Gravity stabilizers failed, and Chief felt the stomach-lurching sensation of null-G as the Chimera's artificial gravity cut out. In the darkness and chaos, he moved. Zero-gravity combat was something Spartans trained for extensively: void operations, boarding actions, ship-to-ship engagements in the cold vacuum of space. Chief used the confusion to navigate by memory and motion tracker, pushing off bulkheads toward the hull breach his team had created. Emergency lighting flickered on, red emergency protocols that bathed everything in crimson. Behind him, he could hear Thrawn's voice over the comms: "Calm despite the crisis, all hands, battle stations. Restore primary power. Security teams, track the intruder, he's heading for Section 7. Chief reached the hull breach just as Phoenix Squadron's assault intensified. With the shields down, the rebel fleet hammered the Chimera with everything they had. Turbolaser fire raked across the Star Destroyer's hull, and Chief felt the ship shudder under the impacts. The boarding shuttle was gone, his team had escaped as ordered. Which left Chief alone on a crippled but still operational Star Destroyer, with no extraction plan and an entire Imperial crew hunting him. He'd been in worse situations. Not many. But some. Chief moved through the ship like a ghost, using service corridors and maintenance shafts that the Empire's crew wasn't trained to think about. His armor's power was depleting, running on reserves now, and his shields had been offline since the generator room. But he was alive, mobile, and the mission was accomplished. The Chimera was crippled. Thrawn's greatest asset was damaged. And somewhere out there, Phoenix Squadron was withdrawing, having proven that even Imperial Star Destroyers could bleed. Chief found an emergency escape pod, tiny, designed for single occupants during catastrophic ship failure. He crammed his armored bulk inside, sealed the hatch, and jettisoned into space just as the Chimera's tractor beams came back online. The pod tumbled through the void, buffeted by turbolaser fire and debris from the ongoing battle. Chief's HUD tracked Phoenix Squadron's retreat vector, calculated intercept possibilities, and displayed numbers that weren't encouraging. Then a new signature appeared on sensors, the Ghost, burning hard toward his position, flying through incoming fire with suicidal determination. "Chief, if you're alive in that pod, this is your extraction." Hera's voice was strained but determined. "I'm coming in hot, one pass only, be ready." The Ghost matched velocity with the escape pod, cargo ramp extending, and Chief used the pod's emergency thrusters to line up with the opening. He ejected from the pod, mag boots activated, and grabbed the ramp's edge as the freighter peeled away from the Chimera at velocities that stressed the ship's inertial dampeners. Chief pulled himself into the cargo hold, and Sabine slammed the ramp controls. "Welcome back. We thought you were dead." "Not yet," Chief said, watching through the viewport as the Chimera grew smaller, surrounded by its escort vessels, unable to pursue because its hyperdrive had been sabotaged along with the shields. Phoenix Squadron made the jump to hyperspace, and the Ghost followed, leaving the Imperial battle group behind. In the common area, the team gathered, exhausted, wounded, but alive. Numa had a blaster burn across her ribs. Jai's armor was scorched from near misses. Sabine's hands shook from adrenaline crash. But they'd succeeded. "You killed another Inquisitor," Ezra said, looking at Chief with something between awe and fear. "And you fought Grand Admiral Thrawn's entire security force and escaped." "The mission succeeded," Chief corrected. "That's all that matters." "No," Hera said firmly. "What matters is we all made it back. Mission success means nothing if we lose the people who make victory possible." Chief didn't argue. He understood the sentiment even if his training disagreed. Spartans were taught that mission success superseded individual survival. But these rebels operated on different principles: human connection, loyalty to each other, fighting not just to win but to preserve what made winning worthwhile. Maybe they were right. Or maybe both philosophies were necessary for different kinds of warfare. "Thrawn will adapt," Numa said quietly. "He'll study what we did, analyze our tactics, and develop countermeasures. This victory cost us, he'll make sure the next engagement costs us more." "Then we adapt faster," Chief said. "We change tactics, avoid patterns, and force him to react to us instead of predicting us." "That's the plan," Cham's voice came through the comm from Gerrel. "Phoenix Squadron is already spreading word of the victory. An Imperial Star Destroyer crippled. Grand Admiral Thrawn forced to retreat for repairs. And the Demon of Lothal proving that the Empire's most powerful weapons can be beaten." Chief removed his helmet, letting the crew see his face for the first time since they'd met. It was a gesture, trust, solidarity, acknowledgement that they'd earned the right to know the person behind the armor. "My name is John," he said quietly. "Master Chief is a rank. Spartan is what I am. But my name is John." Sabine smiled. Well, John. On behalf of everyone who's ever wanted to punch the Empire in the face, thank you. That was the most beautiful act of destruction I've ever witnessed. It wasn't destruction, Chief said, looking out at the hyperspace tunnel streaming past. It was a message. The Empire isn't invincible. Their ships can be boarded. Their Inquisitors can die. And somewhere out there, humanity, or whatever we're calling this alliance, still fights back. He thought about home. About the UNSC, the Covenant War, and whether humanity had survived in his absence. He thought about Cortana, her matrix fragmenting, her last words about saving him. But right now, in this moment, in this galaxy, there was a war to fight and people who needed a soldier who'd spent 30 years learning how to win against impossible odds. The Empire called him Priority 1. The rebels called him the Demon. But John 1:17, last of the Spartan is, knew what he really was, a weapon pointed at tyranny, forged in desperation, and unwilling to stop until freedom won or he fell. And Spartans didn't die. They were just missing in action. The weeks following the Chimera operation transformed the Rebel Alliance's perception of what was possible. Cell leaders across the Outer Rim studied Chief's tactics, adapted his methods, and began conducting operations with newfound confidence. The Empire's aura of invincibility had been shattered by a warrior from beyond their galaxy, a soldier who fought without the Force, without fear, and without the assumption that defeat was inevitable. Grand Admiral Thrawn withdrew the Chimera for repairs, but his reputation as an unbeatable strategist had suffered its first significant blow. Intelligence reports suggested the Emperor himself had taken notice of the anomalous combatant operating in the Outer Rim territories. Chief continued working with the rebellion, training operatives, planning operations, and searching for any clue about how he'd arrived in this galaxy, and more importantly, how he might return home. Ancient Jedi texts mentioned Force anomalies, tears in spacetime, and legends of travelers from beyond the known galaxy. But answers remained elusive. On Lothal, Imperial forces tightened their grip, hunting for the rebels who'd humiliated them. The people whispered stories of the Demon, a warrior in green armor who appeared from nowhere, struck like lightning, and vanished before the Empire could respond. To some, he was a legend. To others, a symbol that resistance wasn't futile. Ezra continued his training with Kanan, developing Force abilities that might one day help rebuild the Jedi Order. Sabine perfected demo techniques inspired by Chief's brutal efficiency. Hera coordinated with Phoenix Squadron on increasingly ambitious operations. And Cham's resistance network grew, emboldened by proof that even the Empire's greatest weapons could be challenged. Master Chief stood on the Ghost's observation deck, watching Lothal's twin suns set through the viewport, and allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He'd been torn from his galaxy, thrown into a war that wasn't his own, and adopted by rebels who fought with courage that reminded him of the best humanity had to offer. He didn't know if he'd ever find his way home. Didn't know if the Covenant War had ended in humanity's victory or extinction. Didn't know if Cortana had survived, if the UNSC still existed, if Earth still burned beneath alien skies. But he knew this: wherever Spartans found themselves, they fought. They protected. They stood between civilization and those who would destroy it. And in this galaxy far, far away, tyranny had learned what the Covenant learned decades ago, that some warriors don't stop, don't surrender, and don't accept defeat. They called him the Demon of Lothal. The Empire designated him Priority 1. But John 1:17 knew what he truly was, a soldier far from home, fighting a familiar war in an unfamiliar place, proving that courage and skill transcended galaxies. The Force bound all things in this universe, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. But Master Chief didn't need the Force. He had something better: 30 years of experience fighting impossible odds, the training of humanity's greatest warriors, and the absolute conviction that freedom was worth any sacrifice. The Empire would learn, as the Covenant had learned, that some enemies don't quit. Some weapons don't break. And some legends are built not on mysticism or destiny, but on one Spartan's unwavering commitment to finish the fight. May the Force be with you. More stories await.